Here's today's top headlines. One day they'll slip up, says the FBI's deputy director, and when they do, David Bowditch vowed today U.S. authorities will be there waiting to bring them to justice. Waiting because the 4 Chinese suspects in the largest data breach ever involving a U.S. credit reporting agency, Equifax, in 2017, are out of U.S. reach for now. Bowditch says these computer intrusions are all too familiar.
You think, well, there goes my credit card number, my social security number, my bank account information, and you sign up for another year of free credit card monitoring information. We cannot think like that in this country. American businesses cannot be complacent about protecting their data.
Hackers accessed Equifax data, including social security numbers, driver's license numbers, and addresses from almost 150 million Americans. Attorney General William Barr says roughly 80% of economic espionage cases implicate the Chinese government. The 4 suspects just indicted were identified as members of the People's Liberation Army in China. President Trump is offering a $4.8 trillion election year budget plan, saying he's focused on cleaning up spending.
We're doing a lot of things that are very good, including waste and fraud, tremendous waste and tremendous fraud.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is already condemning what she calls Trump's savage cuts to programs Americans rely upon. Amazon is asking a federal court to allow questioning of President Trump in a suit challenging a highly lucrative cloud contract awarded to Microsoft. The company claims Trump interfered with its bid because he views its chief executive Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post, as his political enemy. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Bob Moon. Bloomberg Balance of Power with David Weston continues.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston reporting from Manchester, New Hampshire, where we are for the New Hampshire primaries. But now, right now, let's get the latest on the coronavirus, which is really a global story, as the death toll climbed to at least 910 people. Chinese President Xi Jinping appeared in public for the first time since the death of a prominent physician wearing a mask and having his temperature taken. Joining us now from Hong Kong is our colleague, Bloomberg's Sophie Camarudin. So, Sophie, thank you so much for being with us. Give us the latest in China as far as the Chinese people know.
Well, there was little rush hour traffic as thousands returned to work this Monday after the extended Lunar New Year holidays. As you noted, President Xi Jinping making an appearance under intense scrutiny given the pressure the authorities are under to contain the outbreak. But we do have businesses and factories reopening. This is they heed the government's call to minimize the economic impact, although we are seeing plenty of people still opting to stay at home. So that is seeing Foxconn, for example, just resume some of its operations, with the number of workers that have returned from the break still not exactly known. So companies very much still assessing how to contain the potential for exposure as well as manage the disruptions. You have the Chinese government then looking to soften that impact, spending $10 billion. But with this, the WHO says it's still too early to call the peak of this outbreak, saying they're monitoring 10 provinces outside of Hubei as they are seeing a pickup in cases there.
Yeah, so we have the situation within China, mainland China itself, but also the WHO, as I understand, is warning about what's happening outside of China. We had that situation, for example, with a conference, as I understand, in Singapore, and may have led to more cases. How big a concern is that about actually what's going on outside of mainland China?
So ultimately, the WHO is cautioning around the potential for the super spreader effect and direct transmission. But when it comes to that Singapore conference, which we did see lead to several cases in the UK and elsewhere, the WHO said that it's too early to call that a super spreader event. But of course, authorities are very much on high alert. Singapore has confirmed at least 45 cases, with 23 of those being direct transmissions. And we are seeing the UK as well raise the alarm here, saying that the virus is an imminent threat, tightening its quarantine rules as its total number of cases has increased to 8. And we are seeing the UAE also confirm a new suspected case.
Yeah, a lot to continue to monitor. Really appreciate your reporting. Sophie Camarudin, she's over in Hong Kong as we keep following what the WHO is doing, what the Chinese government is doing, by the way, what the PBOC is doing as well. Up next, we're going to turn the focus back here to New Hampshire and its primary. We're going to look at what role pocketbook issues will play in tomorrow's election. as with one of the prominent people here who really understands the New Hampshire economy and business. And he'll tell us exactly how New Hampshire business is reacting to this economy and whether it agrees with President Trump that things are going extraordinarily well. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all advancing. Asian stocks slipped as investors sought to gauge the economic hit from the spreading coronavirus while preparing for more corporate earnings. As for China's response in dealing with the coronavirus, Eric Robertson is Global Head of FX Research at Standard Chartered Bank. We've got the Dow, Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ all higher right now, with the S&P 500 index up 10, a gain of 0.3%. The Dow up 60 points, higher by 0.2%. NASDAQ is up 62. That is a gain of 0.7%. 10 years up 11.30 seconds, yield 1.54%. Gold up 0.4%. 15.75 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.6%. 49.61 a barrel. Some of the other stories that we're following today, Carlos Ghosn's lawyers faced off with Nissan Motor in an Amsterdam court for the first time since the former executive's dramatic escape from Tokyo last year. Ghosn is suing his former employer for 15 million euros, that's about $16.4 million, as part of a Dutch wrongful dismissal lawsuit. Billionaire Peter Thiel, an early investor in Facebook, who once controlled 45 million shares of the social media giant, unloaded most of his remaining stake last week. According to a regulatory filing, Thiel, a member of Facebook's board, sold 53,600 shares held by his Rivendell One for $11 million, leaving him with about $2 million of stock. And Amazon has asked the U.S. Court of Federal Claims to allow it to question President Trump in its lawsuit, challenging the loss of a highly lucrative cloud contract. In a filing made public today, Amazon asks to question Trump and top Pentagon leaders about their role in the Pentagon's Joint Enterprise Defense Infrastructure, or JEDI, cloud contract. Restaurant Brands International shares moving higher after posting earnings that topped analyst estimates, driven by surging popularity of the Popeyes chain chicken sandwich. Popeyes same-store sales soared 34% in the fourth quarter, more than doubled the 15% gain that analysts had predicted, according to consensus metrics. Simon Property Group has agreed to buy rival American shopping mall operator Taubman Centers for about $3.6 billion, a combination that comes as e-commerce continues to roil brick-and-mortar retailer. Simon will pay $52.50 a share in cash for all of Taubman's common stock. That's about 51% more than Taubman's closing share price on Friday. And Foxconn Technology Group has resumed some production at its main iPhone-making site in Zhengzhou, according to local officials, though it's unclear how many workers actually returned. Again, recapping, stocks are moving higher. S&P 500 index up 9, up 0.3. NASDAQ up 0.6. The Dow up by 0.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Manchester, New Hampshire, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. For Bloomberg First Word News, we go now to Mark Crumpton in New York.
David, President Trump's new $4.8 trillion election year budget calls for spending billions more on defense. It would also cut social programs while adding almost $1 trillion to the debt. The fiscal plan was unveiled today. Still, the president's budget is more of a political document. Congress has to appropriate the money, and lawmakers aren't likely to finish work on the budget until after the election. A leader of German Chancellor Angela Merkel's Christian Democratic Union confirmed during a speech in Berlin today she will step down as the party leader and not seek higher office, creating controversy over Germany's political future.
Ich werde mich nicht eine Kanzlerkandidatur.
I will not run as a chancellor candidate.
So wie ich das angekündigt.
Just as I have announced this, I am leading the process to come to a chancellor candidate for the CDU, the union.
Der CDU, der Union gemeinsam zu kommen, weiter von vorne.
Kramp-Karrenbauer stressed she will remain in her role as defense minister in Merkel's cabinet. Merkel says she will cooperate with Kramp-Karrenbauer during the transition. In his first foreign trip of 2020, Pope Francis will visit the Mediterranean island nation of Malta. The Vatican revealed the trip is scheduled for the end of May. The Maltese Archbishop says he expects the visit to highlight the need for Malta to welcome migrants despite its small size. The pontiff is also rumored to be planning trips to Indonesia and East Timor in the second half of 2020. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David, back to you in Manchester.
Thanks so much, Mark. Candidates are making their last pitches to New Hampshire voters here in New Hampshire today ahead of the primary that's coming up tomorrow night. Joining us now to discuss what voters want out of their economy is Dr. Alan Bolio. He is president and a principal of ITR Economics. Also still with us are Bloomberg contributors Rick Davis and Jeannie Zano. So welcome, Dr. Bolio. Good to have you here. So answer the question I just posed. If you're a New Hampshire businessman or woman, what are you looking for out of the economy right now?
Same as you do every other day. Stability and knowns. Uncertainty is the enemy of business everywhere, and New Hampshire is no different than that. And if we know what the rules are, and if we know what the opportunities are here in New Hampshire, across the country, we take maximum advantage of them to the benefit of everyone.
Well, if you follow President Trump's Twitter account, you wouldn't say it's that known. There's a fair number of unknowns, and yet the economy is doing pretty well across the nation, as I understand it, right here in New Hampshire.
And the economy is doing pretty well across the nation and in New Hampshire, but it is slowing down. Most people just look at the trajectory of GDP, see the number of dollars getting larger, but the rate of growth has been bleeding off since June 2018. The rate of growth on a deflated basis is the slowest in about, or the lowest, depending on which way you want to verbalize it, in about 31 months. So the economy's been slowly unwinding just a little bit, not moving lower. Industrial production, which is mostly manufacturing, is actually in decline. Very mild, but it is going down. So when I hear people say the economy's booming, I wonder what metric they're looking at. And they usually quote the stock market, which is not the economy.
Dr. Bolio,
yes, sir.
You just mentioned some of the manufacturing offsets. New Hampshire used to be known as the textile capital in this region. The mills are shutting down, a lot less employment. Yet we've also heard there's been some increase in investment in areas around tech. But that's two different kinds of a job. How has the state managed to offset the losses in manufacturing, and what have you done with those workers who used to be employed in the mills?
Well, the ones you're talking about left a long time ago. They either aged out or they went elsewhere. We have a very educated workforce here in New Hampshire, and you're right, it is very much technology. We make a lot into transportation, export a lot into transportation, computers, electronics, chemicals. So the old textile mills are gone. Now they're just office space like ours. We're in one of the mills.
Right.
New worker.
So you said, uncertainty is the enemy of business. What uncertainty are small business owners in New Hampshire facing at this point? And how are they voting on that uncertainty in your estimation, or are those two things completely separate in their minds?
I don't know how they're voting because we're an apolitical firm and we tend not to ask how this is going to impact their voting. But what it has done in the past is slow down the process, not of hiring. Everybody knows you have to hire as much as you possibly can, but of investment. B2B investments in America have slowed down very dramatically. In the last quarter, it actually went below year-ago levels. And a lot of that is because of what's going to happen, what's coming next. The leading indicators are saying that's all going to pick up speed really soon. We're a leading indicator rate of change-based company. We look at what is and what tells us about the future, and the future is going to be bright, so we're going to see CapEx picking up speed in the second half of this year. So that uncertainty begins to go away. All of a sudden, people are feeling better about the future. They're seeing more orders. The RFQs are picking up, and they start spending more on themselves, which helps to pick up the economy in general. That B2B is 18% of GDP, so...
What does it do about consolidation, mergers and acquisitions and things like that? Because one of the things I have heard is some C-suites, some CEOs are saying, you know what, the stock market's really up, asset value is really up, but the growth isn't really quite there, and that makes me nervous. Until I figure out how those two things get squared, I'm not sure I want to make a lot of big investments.
It's interesting you mention that because we've been tracking that recently too. Corporate profits are not lighting up the world, yet stock valuations are going up. There's a lot of buybacks going on, and that's a cause for concern. That's not a firm ground on which to build a stock market rally that's sustainable. When it's going to come down is not my call. We're business economists. If I could time the market, I'd probably be doing something else.
All of us would be. All of us would be.
Mergers and acquisitions, though, I think you're right. It is picking up and has been, and the multiples are up probably more than they should be because money's looking for something to do. And as money's looking for something to do, sellers are able to get their price.
Changing pace a little bit, the Granite Staters haven't avoided what a lot of people have been affected by, and that's the opioid crisis in America. How has the opioid crisis here in New Hampshire, which we've heard quite a bit about, affected productivity and growth?
Well, it's made it tougher on the labor market, which impacts growth and impacts ability of companies to grow. And you're right, it's been an extremely serious epidemic here in New Hampshire and in Manchester. It's lessening slowly through time, we hope. There's a lot of work being done on it. The state's trying to be proactive on it, but it's a cultural crisis that's not going to dissipate easily. The more I think that we become adjusted to it, and the more that we attract a workforce in New Hampshire, which is actually a bigger problem, in my opinion, than the opioid crisis, the better off we'll be. We're light on millennials and Gen Zs here in the state of New Hampshire. We're heavy on boomers, which we're leaving the workforce, not entering, and that's going to make it tough on manufacturers, distributors, and businesses in the state.
We hear an awful lot about the good unemployment numbers in New Hampshire and across the country.
Yes.
And so, we're always hearing that, that is sort of the be-all and end-all, as to how people should think about the economy. But you're talking about a potential slowdown coming down the pike. So how would you square those two things?
Sure. Statistically, I can show you that looking at the unemployment rate is the same as looking in your rearview mirror of your car and thinking you can see the next turn in the road. It's a perfect lagging indicator. It has nothing to do with tomorrow. It has to do only with today and what has been. When you look at business optimism indices, when you look at the USLI, we have our own proprietary ITR leading indicator. Those will lead by 7, 10, 12 months into the future, and that's what we go by. And that's why the slowdown that we're in now, it's not coming, it's here, is going to end in the next quarter. And the second half of the year, whoever gets elected is going to inherit a strong economy. And I can guarantee you, whoever's elected is going to take credit for it, but we'll all know that it started beforehand.
Well, very much like President Trump has inherited a growing economy and has been able to benefit from that continued growth.
As all presidents do on the way up, absolutely.
Alan Bolio of ITR Economics, Jeannie Zaino, and Rick Davis will be staying with us. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
From the Bloomberg Newsroom in New York, I'm Bob Moon. Bloomberg Balance of Power with David Weston continues in a moment. But first, today's top headlines. As hundreds of thousands of Chinese workers were set to return from an extended Lunar New Year break, life is anything but normal across that country. More offices and stores in Beijing and other parts of China did finally reopen today. Many workers and shoppers appear to stay away. Public health authorities are watching closely to see whether the return to business worsens the spread of the virus, which has infected more than 40,000 people globally and killed over 900, with the vast majority of cases in China. President Trump appeared to minimize the coronavirus concerns as he spoke to reporters at the White House today.
Now, the virus that we're talking about having to do, a lot of people think that goes away in April with the heat, as the heat comes in. Typically, that will go away in April. We're in great shape, though. We have 11 cases, and many of them are in good shape now.
Even before the slow and cautious reopening of businesses, however, China just reported a new rise in cases, dimming optimism that the near quarantine of some 60 million people and other disease control measures might be working. Ahead of tomorrow's New Hampshire primary, Pete Buttigieg is telling voters they need to stay engaged, even though the Trump impeachment trial is over.
I know that creates a sense of exhaustion that may tempt some of us to turn it off and walk away altogether, which is, of course, exactly how the cynics would win, exactly what we cannot allow to happen.
In the meantime, Elizabeth Warren is emerging and entering into a critical stretch of her campaign, relegated to the murky middle. She has to convince voters she has a viable path to the nomination, even if that path is unclear. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Bob Moon. Now, Bloomberg Balance of Power with David Weston continues.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio. I'm David Weston reporting from Manchester, New Hampshire, where we are for those primaries coming up tomorrow. We are back now with Dr. Alan Bolio. He's president and principal of ITR Economics. Also with us is Rick Davis and Jeannie Zanis. So we were talking in the break, and you particularly interested, Rick, on the dislocation. Who may be being left behind as the economy transforms?
Democratic candidates all over the state today are making a case on the economy, and what they're saying is that not everybody has benefited from the boom that's existed for the last really almost 5 or 6 years.
Right.
How has that impacted New Hampshire?
The same as, again, most states. New Hampshire's not really that different. We're just small, and you can walk from one end to the other. The answer is those small towns that used to have an industry where the industry is no longer there.
Yep.
The factory's gone, the distribution center's gone, whatever it happens to be. And so they're feeling left behind and left out. And in the old days, as most of us would remember, you would move to where the jobs are. But in our culture now, you don't move to where the jobs are. You expect the jobs to come to you. Yeah. So, and that's why you feel they feel disaffected. Disaffected. Thank you. It's because they don't want to be part, and they're not currently part, and it's viewed as a gift of some kind.
And this sort of goes along with that. You had mentioned in the previous segment that New Hampshire is an aging population. There's a lot of boomers, but the millennials, the Generation Z, are either moving out or not coming to the state. What are businesses doing, or what is the New Hampshire government, or what could the federal government do to change that? I mean, it's a problem, and I'm from New York. It's a problem there as well, particularly in upstate New York, as young people move and look for opportunities.
I don't think there's anything the federal government can do or should do. I'm a business economist. They do their thing and business does its. And business like ours, we have to attract millennials. 70% of our workforce at ITR are millennials. And what we do is we attract folks who like the lifestyle, but we also pay Boston wages. So we pay commensurate with the city where they might think they might want to live, but we show a different lifestyle. And then we attract the folks who like outdoors and skiing and hunting and that sort of thing, or don't mind driving an hour to the Sox game or whatever it happens to be.
Patriots.
Yeah, those folks too. So, but it's business that has to attract them, and it has to show a cost of living, and it's expensive here, and it has to show a wage scale and a lifestyle. And as a firm, it's like everybody else, we have to show that's professional development, personal development. We're doing good in the community. We care about what's going on in the world. And that's how you attract business. It's not a government issue. It's a business issue.
One of the things that President Trump really emphasized in his State of the Union just last week was the extent to which some of the lower wage people are really over-indexing in the benefits. Real wages are going up faster with them, and particularly focused on African Americans. He talked about women, things like that. Are you experiencing that here in the state of New Hampshire?
I do not know. I actually made a note when I listened to the speech going, check this one out, because I don't know. And it struck me as worth checking out.
Yeah, I mean, I know nationwide, you can see that basically is true, but I wonder if that's happening in New Hampshire.
I do not know.
How about wage rates amongst blue-collar workers? The famous blue-collar boom that everyone's talking about, or at least the president is. Have you seen blue-collar workers getting a catch-up in this economy?
Yes. In our fourth book, we're covering some of this. My twin brother and I are the principals of ITR Economics. So if you want to know what he looks like, it's this when you see him. It's
How do we know it's you?
Yeah, exactly.
No, you don't. The reality is wages adjusted for inflation are doing well across a whole lot of industries. And I just dove into welders and carpenters and plumbers, and their wages are doing well. And in most states, you're going to make a nice living. You're not going to have to borrow $100,000 to get through school. You're going to be able to put money away in your 401k, never be out of the job, and retire very nicely. It's a good place to be. I think one of our problems is in business, again, is that we don't promote the trades enough. We still talk the word college a lot instead of education, and there's a big difference between the two.
And can I just push you a little bit? What you said before was, you don't expect anything out of the federal government, or quite frankly, state government. But what about issues? You're just talking about education as a professor. What about retraining, for instance? Doesn't the government have a role in helping all of us adjust to this new economy? Or should that totally be the auspices of corporations?
No, I think you're right. Government has a place there, and I used to teach as well, so it's a great space to be in. But I think businesses need to be involved in the process. So they're helping with the curriculum, they're helping with the output, they're getting the workers they need as opposed to what the government thinks they need, and together it's actually a very nice relationship that produces a good workforce.
How global is the New Hampshire economy? That's to say, to what extent is the economy dependent on integrated with imports and exports, not just of goods but also of services?
It is as integrated as the nation is. Basically, 7.4% of our GDP, GSP actually in the state, is made up of the export of goods, and nationally it's 8%. So we're right on par with the national export figure. So it's very important what goes on in the world. We are integrated in a very high-tech way. So what happens in China makes a difference here. What happens in Canada and Mexico with the USMCA was very important here. Our neighbors to the north and south are bigger trading partners in China. So it matters. And that was a trade deal that certainly helped.
We had some ruffles earlier last year on cross-border trade with Canada. Obviously, that's probably a bigger impact than anything here. Did you see any slowdown in trade, or or do you have more optimism with the signing of the new trade deal?
I have more optimism. There were redundancies done away with. The laws were simplified. Improving the domestic content of automobiles would be good for Canada, and as a major trading partner, what's good for them helps our economy. So it was a good deal, and most companies that do business will benefit. But in all cases, there are always winners and losers, just like Brexit. Some win, some lose. It's like anything that happens in this world. There's winners and losers. If I can't buy from China, can I buy from Poland? If I source from Poland, I don't have to worry about Chinese tariffs, and I win. It's a winners and losers world.
Alan Beaulieu, thank you so much for being with us. Really helpful.
David.
He is president and a principal of ITR Economics, along with his twin brother, we've learned. Coming up, shares of cruise line companies continue to fall as fears of the coronavirus grow. Stock of the Hour is up next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Equities are climbing. Asian stocks fell today as investors sought to gauge the economic hit from the spreading coronavirus while preparing for more corporate earnings. S&P 500 index up 9, a gain of 0.3%. NASDAQ up another 58 points, trading at a record. We've got the Dow up 54, up by 0.2%. Again, NASDAQ higher by 0.6%. Burger King has temporarily closed about half of its 1,300 locations in China amid the coronavirus epidemic that has claimed more than 900 lives. The Restaurant Brands International-owned chain is carefully watching the situation in China, which it has said provides a big growth opportunity for Burger King, along with its two other brands, Popeyes and Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons has just 30 locations in China. Popeyes has not opened its doors there yet. Shares of Restaurant Brands, which uses the ticker QSR, up now by 2.1%. Now, as for the coronavirus and the effect on the market outlook, Lali Topcholo is with JOHCM.
We're basically operating with the assumption that we just don't know. So you can look at how previous, whether it's the Spanish flu or SARS, have trended. You can draw all these comparisons. The reality is we don't know. And the market reaction is somewhat reasonable.
It does promise to be a busy week for economic news, from the Fed to major data releases. And with a preview, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell heads to Capitol Hill Tuesday and Wednesday to deliver the central bank's semi-annual report to the House and Senate. He'll touch on a variety of subjects. The Fed recently downgraded its assessment of household spending. The fate of America's record-long economic expansion rests on consumers. The government will issue retail sales data Friday, and economists are forecasting an increase. Also this week, inflation data and industrial production. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
Recapping S&P up by 0.3%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston in Manchester, New Hampshire, here for the primary tomorrow. But right now, it is time for the Stock of the Hour. This hour, it is the Norwegian Cruise Lines. An analyst at Nomura thinks conditions could worsen with the coronavirus. Dave Wilson has more from New York, so I'm not sure how much worse they can get, Dave, but I guess you'll tell us.
Absolutely, David. I mean, really, this is a second day of declines for Norwegian. You know, on Friday, they decided that anyone holding a Chinese, Hong Kong, or Macau passport would not be able to go on their cruises. And anyone who's been through a Chinese airport in the past 30 days, even if just as a transit passenger, they won't be able to go on cruises either. So it's a matter of the restrictions really being ratcheted up in an effort to try and avoid the kind of issues that we've seen with the ship that got docked in New Jersey, and you had 4 passengers taken off and brought to the hospital. That was the Anthem of the Seas, for Royal Caribbean. There's the issue in Japan with the Carnival cruise line that you've got now 135 people affected by the coronavirus. They're trying to avoid getting into that same position. You get some idea of what China means to the cruise business just looking at that chart. It's substantial, and beyond sort of the U.S. and the rest of the world. I mean, it is definitely a key area, and you can see the follow through on these stocks. I mean, that particular table looks back 2 weeks, but in the last 2 days, you've really seen most of those declines take place, and it's a little bit of a catch up in a sense for Norwegian because its shares haven't been hit as hard, at least this year, as those of Royal Caribbean and Carnival. So definitely what we're seeing now with the greater restrictions, it's definitely having an effect on the stock.
Yeah, you have to feel badly for holders of the stock. On the other hand, you can't feel nearly as badly as those people stuck in that ship in Yokohama. That sounds awfully bad over there. Many thanks now to Bloomberg's Dave Wilson in New York. And now it's time for a few final thoughts from Jeannie Zaino and Rick Davis before we really turn to the primaries, which start tomorrow. So, Rick, I mean, you've run these campaigns. I pointed out you've won every one you've done in New Hampshire. I want to give you your due here. What are you doing at this point if you're running a campaign? Is it all baked in, basically? Are people going to vote the way they're going to vote?
Yeah, your ads are already up. I mean, you're trying to stage a couple of good rallies, town halls to punch out your get out the vote operation. You've been training your staffs to know where to go to get your vote out, and really making your final arguments. Why is it that I'm the one that you should be supporting? Come tomorrow morning. So there's really not much left. I mean, this is really where you really get uptight. You get nervous because you can't buy new ads, you can't deploy new resources, and you're really left with the campaign you came with.
So Jeannie, there's a lot at stake, obviously, for these Democratic candidates. I wonder how much is at stake for the state of New Hampshire as well. We just saw Iowa, I think it's fair to say, stumble, right? And it really could affect their future role in the primary nomination process. What about New Hampshire? Because when we hear that so many of the successful candidates have come in number 1 and number 2, is there some chance that won't happen this time?
I think there's a chance it might not happen this time, and we've seen several cycles where people, including Howard Dean, have called for maybe New Hampshire shouldn't be the first to vote. So it's been similar to Iowa, under some kind of attack, although they have a law in place which says they will. We also have a Secretary of State who's been holding that position but may not be in office forever. So I think it is a precarious time for the New Hampshire primary, just like Iowa. And of course, it's not a caucus. We likely will have results, hopefully for all of us tomorrow night. But I do think they do want to get it right. I mean, again, that's their motto. We're first and we're right. So we're going to see tomorrow night if that holds true.
Rick, as I said, you've won here, so you may have a vested interest, but does it really make sense to have a state that's 1.35 million people? It's a pretty small state, pretty homogeneous state. Does it really make sense to give them an outsized say in who gets to be the nominee?
Look, you got to start somewhere, and the tradition of these primaries and caucuses has been to go to places where you can create some retail political environments. If this were Texas or New York or California, these states are so big, you're going to see big rallies. You're not going to see candidates interacting with voters. And I would say New Hampshire prides itself very well on being able to pick the right winner, and they run you through your paces. There are all kinds of wonderful jokes. John McCain walked into a barber shop about a week before the election and said, "Hey, I'm John McCain and I'm running for president." And they said, "Yeah, we were just laughing about that this morning." I mean, they're tough here. And so somebody has to kick the tires. It's gone to New Hampshire in the past as the first primary, and it's going to happen again tomorrow.
I'm curious, Jeannie, what do you tell your students at Iona College about the way this process works? Because there's some Americans who say it doesn't make much sense to us, but does it really make sense over time?
I think in this round we see it doesn't quite frankly make sense for the Democratic Party to do it this way. What they've done is they've invested an inordinate amount of time and money in 2 states which quite frankly won't decide this election come November, and they've seeded the states that will decide it to the president, the incumbent president. That is a big problem for the Democratic Party, let alone for, as you're talking about, for democracy as a whole. So I do think there are a lot of challenges with the way we run, the parties run this nomination process.
This is such a great point, how much the Democratic Party has at stake here, because they had a lot of candidates, they had that process with the standards, how you invade, a lot of controversy with that. Iowa stumble. How much does the Democratic Party have to lose here?
Well, this is an important state. Even though it's not always a targeted state in the general election, it probably will be this year. And that's why Donald Trump's showing up tonight for a big rally here, because he wants to stake his claim to this state in the general election. Look, the Democrats are a little bit more pinched because their demographics don't fit in these two states, right? I mean, they are the, party that has been more successful reaching out to minorities, not rural white men. And so these are two states that don't really look like the Democratic Party, but they're going to have to find votes, because whether they like it or not, there's going to be a vote tomorrow.
Which is what Vice President Biden keeps saying. This doesn't look like the country overall, so don't hold it against me. Okay, many thanks to Bloomberg contributors Jeannie Zaino and Rick Davis, who will be with us throughout the coverage of the New Hampshire primary. They'll be joining us tomorrow night for our special coverage right here in New Hampshire of the primary results. Coverage starts at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Bloomberg.
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. How could you not love him?
Hamilton the Pug's adoption story started at a shelter. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
The comedian Louis C.K. is on tour now for the first time since his sexual misconduct against other comedians was brought to light. This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with critic Hilton Alls about how Louis C.K. is addressing the issue in his act or not addressing it. And more broadly, we'll talk about when and how a disgraced performer should come back before the public. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
The
pack needs someone to follow.
It's got to be important for somebody to have a breakout moment.
Don't look now, but they're behind you.
Imports declined 2.8%.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Sources tell us that agreement is expected to include commitments on U.S. intellectual property.
With Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
Could we see that play into the results and the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
And live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio here in New York City, it's a bi-coastal version of today's show. Jason Kelly here in New York City. Taylor Riggs with me out in San Francisco. Carol Masser is out. Hi, Tay.
Hey, it's so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, and you're taking the stock market higher, just continuing to shrug off concerns about the coronavirus, maybe looking ahead to Jay Powell and earnings on deck. What do you think?
Yeah, I keep hearing that uncertainty is the word surrounding the impact of the coronavirus on economics, really hoping that in this program we can nail down an economist to give us a % hit to GDP, a % hit to the bottom line versus just general uncertainty. And I want to fold in that negative inverted yield curve now heading into Jay Powell's testimony to Congress. Big deal.
All right, we're going to talk about that and much more. First, let's get to Charlie Pellet. He's got an update on the trade. Hey, Charlie.
Well, hello there, Jason Kelly. Happy Monday to you. NASDAQ is at a record, up 58 points right now, a gain of 0.6%. 95.78 on the NASDAQ Composite Index, and year-to-date column up 6.76%. Equities are climbing as investors seek to gauge the economic hit from the spreading coronavirus while preparing for more corporate earnings. Right now, we've got the S&P up 9, a gain there of 0.3%. The Dow advancing 47 points, up by 0.2%. 10-year up 10.30 seconds, yield 1.54%, and gold up 0.4%. 15.76 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude trading below $50 a barrel now. 49.60 down today by 1.4%. Brent 53.23. It is down by 2.3%. So again, recapping, we have got the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ. They're all advancing. S&P up 9 now, a gain of 0.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly here in New York City. Taylor Riggs out in San Francisco. And Taylor, we're going to talk policy and politics. We're going to talk about the Trump budget, but also those Democrats up in New Hampshire. We just heard David Weston for a couple hours here on Bloomberg Radio and Television tee us up for tomorrow. So a lot of attention there.
Huge, especially coming off of the Iowa caucus here and using the app, which that app was supposed to be used in Nevada. Nevada has said no, thank you. New Hampshire, as you know, does things a little bit differently, so we don't have to worry about the tech concerns, but very curious to see how New Hampshire sort of continues to set the stage for us politically.
All right, and speaking of technology, we're going to talk about a YouTuber that probably you and I have never heard of, but his work is very familiar to the sub-5-year-old set. So that's coming up in just a little while. And we're going to talk about blood billionaires. Is that a good tease or what?
Yeah, tell me more.
Well, I'm not going to tell you more. You're going to have to, actually, it's going to be probably while you're doing your show. So we're going to be going head to head. I'm going to be trying to sort of draw viewers away from you. It's not a competition, except when it is.
No way. Hashtag one team, one dream.
That's
Jason.
right. That's right. Good point. All right, Taylor Riggs, thank you. So to bring in the rest of the team, right here in New York City with me, Dave Wilson, stocks editor, author of The Chart and the Stock of the Day, and Kriti Gupta. She's from our cross-asset team. They're going to help us set the Business Week agenda. Dave, I want to start with you. Tell Taylor and me one thing that investors need to know today.
Well, today, the concern about coronavirus seems to be kind of isolated. You look at the cruise line stocks, they're down for second day. I mean, especially Norwegian, off about 2.8%. You know, that company and Royal Caribbean basically saying on Friday, if you have a Chinese passport of any kind, you're not getting on one of our ships. And if you've been through a Chinese airport in the last 30 days, even as a travel passenger, you're not getting on any of our ships. So, but it's not really kind of a broad-based concern because, I mean, you see Tesla higher, up about 2.5% right now. They were able to restart production in their Chinese factory. You look at Apple shares, I mean, they're down a touch, but they were down more earlier on. And Foxconn, which produces a lot of iPhones and other gadgets for Apple, I mean, they're able to, at this point, at least kind of tell people what the schedule is for getting production back up to speed. And some of it's already started. So to that extent, you know, it's not as big of an issue as it has been lately in terms of what the investors are thinking about.
Critty, let me bring you in here. This has sort of been an issue for me in the last week. People have said that it's too soon to tell the exact impact on global economics from the coronavirus. You've heard Dave there talk a little bit about the supply chain. Do we have any numbers yet on terms of the impact of GDP, impact on the bottom line from these companies who, frankly, for the last 3 weeks to a month have really been disrupted in terms of production and supply chains?
Yes, I'm going to echo what you said there. No one has given a straight number just yet on hit to GDP. And I think it's because it is unprecedented. I mean, the case count for the coronavirus has surpassed that of the SARS virus. So we are kind of in uncharted territory here. That being said, as close to an actual number that we can get, I'm going to echo Jeff Curry here over at Goldman Sachs, who said that the GDP impact will be 2 times what you're seeing. Oil is going to be 2 times the impact of what the GDP impact will be. He said that. I believe his team did a study on it. We already are seeing oil, under pressure quite a bit. 20% is the number. I mean, some will call that a bear market. For oil, 20%, we're heading there. We're in that direction. Now it's really crucial to see what the GDP impact will be, like you said. But I would say look to oil where you can really pick up some of those cues.
Yeah, Jason, and with oil under $50 a barrel, that's been a key thing that we've been watching as we go global and we do big handoffs to Asia here in our afternoon hours, sort of what that means. And China demand now off 20% when it comes to oil demand.
And energy stocks are clearly the worst performers on the day among the S&P 500's main industry groups. And, by the way, the S&P 500 Energy Index is down more than 20% from a high last April. So from that extent, you have a bear market in the shares, just like you do with the commodity itself.
Right. What are the tech folks saying about this, Taylor?
I think exactly what Dave was talking about earlier. Apple's a big one. Yeah. Tesla finally gaining today because they're talking about reopening up that Shanghai plant. But you have to wonder if the disruption impacts their car delivery estimate for about 500,000 this year. Honhai, which is Apple and Foxconn, big supply chain disruptions. I think more importantly, as we've been talking, Jason, it's not necessarily any specifics right now, but the range of guidance for 2020 forecasts have been larger than usual due to that uncertainty. So analysts are now working with a wider range of it could be a lot higher, could be a lot lower. So the range of guidance is now increasing.
All right, Creedy, last word to you. What do you go back to your desk and focus on the rest of the day?
Something that actually caught my attention this morning was what some of the toy makers are saying. And I think toys are a very interesting sector to look at because a big part of the conversation of whether these Chinese hit to GDP is going to translate over to the U.S. market is it going to hit the U.S. consumer? And that's really been the topic since we had those trade war concerns way back when. It seems like forever now. But this morning, actually, MGA Entertainment, that's the maker of Little Tykes, of Bratz dolls, if you're still familiar, the CEO came out and said that the virus would have a major economic effect. The holiday orders are being disrupted, some idle factories, some China toy producers pushing closure to the end of March. Just reading these headlines here, these are not fun headlines to read. Mattel also shutting foreign factories. I think that's a really good gauge because toys are something you have to physically manufacture in factories, but are also bought when the consumer is feeling really strong. You also have that correlation to consumer confidence.
All right, Kriti Gupta, we're going to leave it there. Markets Live reporter for Bloomberg. Dave Wilson, stocks editor for Bloomberg. We'll see you in just a bit for your chart and stock of the day. Fun fact about you, Taylor, you're a Bratz doll collector, right? Do I have that right? No?
Jason, I'm about 2 decades older than I think what you think I am.
Oh, okay.
But good try.
All right, there we go. Let's do the Bloomberg Business Week bite of the day. One number that tells us a lot. Today's number is 30.7 million. The Apple Watch, Taylor, outsold the entire Swiss industry last year, shipping 30.7 million units compared with 22.1 million for analog watches, according to Strategy Analytics. Traditional Swiss watchmakers like Swatch and Tissot are losing the smart watch wars. It's hard to say. Apple Watch is delivering a better product through deeper retail channels and appealing to younger consumers, this according to a senior analyst there. Not a shocker. Not a huge shocker, but a change in tone for sure. All right, let's get to world and national headlines now. And Bob Moon. Hey, Bob.
Hi, Jason. The debate over spending priorities is already shaping up to be especially contentious as President Trump lays out his proposal for the year ahead, including more spending on the military, including nuclear and space, and less on foreign affairs, domestic programs, and the environment. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports from the White House.
The budget would replace deficit with surplus in 2035. The president spoke about it at a meeting with the nation's governors.
We're putting out a plan today that over not that long a period of time brings our budget and our deficit down to what it should be, which is close to zero. We're not touching Medicare. We want to keep Medicare. We're not touching Social Security. We're not decreasing Medicaid.
Congress generally regards the annual White House budget as a wish list at best, and Democrats quickly charged that the president is proposing severe cuts in health spending. At the White House, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
Almost a week on, and President Trump is still stinging from Republican Senator Mitt Romney's vote in favor of impeachment. Trump was meeting with governors from more than 30 states, as Irv mentioned today at the White House. That was dubbed a business session, as Utah's governor was about to ask Trump a question. The president interrupted to ask his own question.
How's Mitt Romney? You keep him. We don't want him.
One governor asked Trump what was next on his trade agenda. Trump said his attention would be turning to trade issues with Europe. During the question and answer session, the president also said he expected the coronavirus to disappear in April due to warmer weather. Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take. By Bloomberg, I'm Bob Moon.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Tarrow enjoy each other's company.
Most of us don't speak Mandarin. John, do you speak Mandarin?
I do not speak Mandarin.
I just wanted to check that.
Almost as much as they enjoy grilling economic experts.
When this is over, do you bounce back or is there a lasting weakness to it?
Which means that you will enjoy listening.
If things get worse, we're ready to do more.
Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Listen, as a hiring manager, I've got to tell you, the best job candidate isn't always the typical candidate. Sometimes they're a grad of life.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Sometimes the best candidates aren't the ones you're used to.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at BeyondIDo.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
At Wix, we'll create your dream kitchen from design to show-off ready and take care of everything. And now, save a third on showroom kitchen units. Book your free design appointment today. Cure your house embarrassment with Wix. For minimum spend, terms and exclusions, see wix.co.uk.
Dear Cass, sweet pea, not sure what I did to deserve a love like yours. I'm so lucky. You make me want to be a better man. Mind, body, and soul.
Pork balls, fried rice, kung pao chicken, spring rolls extra fried, order 55.
Yeah, here. Happy Valentine's, my love, forever, your little boop. This Valentine's Day, heartfelt can happen anywhere with moonpig.com. Get £10 off when you send someone special 24 roses. Download the app today. Exclusions apply.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks continue to move advance. We've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all higher. NASDAQ trading at a record up 63 points now at 95.83, a gain of 0.7%. S&P up 10, up 0.3%. The Dow holding on to a 0.2% gain now, up by 57 points. U.S. equities are climbing as investors continue to try to gauge the economic hit from the spreading coronavirus while preparing for more corporate earnings and also tomorrow's testimony from Fed Chair Jay Powell. S&P, as I mentioned, pushing higher. We've got the 10-year up 11.30 seconds, yield 1.54%. Gold up 0.4%, 15.76 the ounce, and a pullback for West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.6%, 49.53 a barrel on WTI. Brent down 2.3%, 53.21 a barrel. So again, recapping here, the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all advancing. NASDAQ at a record, S&P up by 0.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you, Charlie. And I'm Taylor Riggs here with Jason Kelly, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
And we can start by being aware of where the money goes.
All right, well, let's figure out where the money at least is proposed to go. The budget, it is always something to behold, the federal budget. Let's get into it. Justin Singh, White House reporter for Bloomberg. He joins us on the phone from our D.C. bureau. Justin, great to have you with Taylor and myself. So tell us about this latest budget from the president.
Sure. So the president has rolled out his plan that would spend $4.8 trillion next year. We'd see an increase in military spending even above some of the historic levels that we've seen over the beginning of the president's term. So that goes up to around $740.5 billion next year. There's some goodies for policy priorities of the president, $2 billion for his wall, a 12% increase for NASA to go to the moon and Mars, but deep cuts we see to social safety net programs, lots of cuts to things like the Environmental Protection Agency, the State Department, traditional sort of boogeymen of the Republican Party, and things that the president has railed against on the campaign trail.
Justin, Jason correctly pointed out when we were coming into this segment that it is the proposed budget. Yes. Remind us again, what is the process from proposed to coming into law? Who gets final say? How does this all work?
Yeah, so it is definitely worth taking this with a major grain of salt, because this is basically just a PR document that the White House puts out. It informs, I think, what Republicans on Capitol Hill will prioritize, but really lawmakers are the ones who have the final say in what gets spent, where things get appropriated. So, while the president proposes some really dramatic cuts, particularly to those social safety net programs, none of them are likely to become law, especially because with Democrats in charge of the House, it's going to be a push and pull between congressional appropriators, and what we've seen in prior years is that the president might get some of the defense spending increases he asked for, but that will only come if Democrats are able to protect and grow the domestic spending priorities that they have.
And Justin, tell us sort of where the most active discussions will be. What will people be fighting the most about between the Republicans, between the administration and presumably the Democrats in Congress?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot here in this budget that the Democrats would sort of outwardly reject, but I think what might be most helpful is to look at the things that could end up becoming law. So there's a lot of detail on defense spending that the White House is pursuing that Republicans could adopt, particularly new spending on securing and improving the nation's nuclear arsenal. Similarly, I think some of the proposals that the president has for health care, for paid family leave, are things that he's going to talk a lot about on the campaign trail. And then if Republicans come into office, are able to sort of secure the White House again, take back the House, there'll be areas that they're going to push for next year.
Justin, how much fodder does this give the Democratic candidates out as they go into New Hampshire and they take a look at this for talking points?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen already a lot of candidates kind of hop on this. Bernie Sanders, Mike Bloomberg have already put statements out saying, these are direct attacks on the types of programs like Medicare and Medicaid that President Trump had pledged on the campaign trail that he wouldn't touch. And so I'm sure that Democrats are going to be mining through this, looking at things like cuts to Sesame Street or the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and more sort of substantial ones involving healthcare that they're going to want to highlight to voters.
Right. And we should point out that Mike Bloomberg, the aforementioned, is the owner of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Radio, and is in fact a Democratic, pursuing the Democratic nomination for president. So what do we hear next, Justin? Where does it go? Not just rhetorically. We know people are going to be, as you just very rightly pointed out in response to Taylor's questions, people will be feasting on this for some time to come. But when do we actually see things make their way to the floor?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be the congressional appropriators aren't going to really go into this process for a couple months at least, and they will likely reauthorize kind of current spending levels until after the election. So I think the big discussions are going to be pushed off until after voters have their say at the polls.
And any view of New Hampshire from down where you are? The president obviously weighing in more and more when he has time with reporters on various candidates here and there, and obviously still not very happy, as we heard in Bob Moon's newscast a little while ago, about Mitt Romney.
Yeah, President Trump himself actually headed up there this evening. he'll do a rally in the state, and the White House has been really sort of eagerly promoting the fact that there's been a long line of people waiting out in the cold for the president. New Hampshire is a state where Republicans feel like they can play a little bit of offense in this upcoming election, and we know that the president, he just did this a week ago in Iowa, sees the big voting events as a chance for him to see some headlines and interject himself into the political process. So I'm sure it's going to be a sort of fiery speech from the president tonight as he tries to gain some eyeballs and some votes in New Hampshire.
I think that is a very safe bet. Justin Singh, thank you so much. White House reporter for Bloomberg, joining us on the phone from our bureau in the nation's capital. Well, coming up, Taylor, we're going to talk a little real estate, some deal making. Simon and Taubman getting together amid a pretty bleak retail backdrop. I think even in the boomtown of San Francisco, you see a little bit of that, right?
This has a little something for all of us, Jason. As you know, brings in your expertise on private equity and real estate and retail slump. Well, we know in my tech world where that's coming from.
All right, that's straight ahead. We'll also get an update on what's going on with the coronavirus. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week here on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. With fears of the coronavirus lurking in the background, stocks are struggling to hold their own. Prices are higher, but well below their highs for the day. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 36, the S&P 500 up 8, the Nasdaq Composite is up 55. Add Burger King to the list of restaurant chains curtailing operations in China amid the coronavirus epidemic. It has temporarily closed about half of its 1,300 China locations, following the lead of Dunkin' Brands, Starbucks, and McDonald's. Xerox is turning up the takeover heat on HP, raising its offer by about $1 billion. HP had rejected Xerox's previous offer last year. As Netflix expands in Hollywood to meet its growing appetite for content, its would-be rivals are setting up shop nearby. Amazon, Apple, and HBO are moving into huge spaces in Culver City as they scale up their movie and TV operations. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
The comedian Louis C.K. is on tour now for the first time since his sexual misconduct against other comedians was brought to light. This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with critic Hilton Alls about how Louis C.K. is addressing the issue in his act or not addressing it. And more broadly, we'll talk about when and how a disgraced performer should come back before the public. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
They named us number 1 in client support, number 1 in firm leadership, number 1 in operational support, number 1 in compensation, number 1 in professional development support, and number 1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA-SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his Ph.D. at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor, is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that so in 10 years we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water? NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
To buy your home, you became a house hunting ace, learned about loans, scoured neighborhoods, and asked the right questions. Now you're queen of your castle. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll feel empowered to own your retirement like you own your home. Go to aceyourretirement.org. Because when it comes to clearing financial hurdles, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
News without analysis is like half a bridge.
Why is the debt to GDP ratio still so important?
Those things, once they're set in place, stay around for years.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Well, coming up here on Bloomberg Business Week, Jason Kelly in New York, Taylor Riggs in San Francisco. We're going to get into something that everyone has a stake in, as Taylor, you mentioned earlier, and that is the mall business, the shopping center business. Technology definitely at play here. We're going to get to that in just a minute. First, let's get to Charlie Pellet. He's got an update on the trade. Hey, Charlie.
Well, hello there, Jason Kelly, and here's what's going on. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, they are all higher right now with the S&P up 11. That is a gain of 0.3%. The Dow pushing higher by 67 points, a gain there of 0.2%. The NASDAQ Composite Index, we're looking at a record right now. The NASDAQ Composite Index up by 65 points. That is a gain of 0.7%. 10 years up 11.30 seconds, yield 1.54%. Gold up 0.4%, 15.75 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude retreating by 1.4%. WTI is now at 49.63 a barrel. So equities are climbing as investors try to gauge the economic hit from the spreading coronavirus while preparing for more corporate earnings. Chad Morganlander is Senior Portfolio Manager at Washington Crossing Advisors.
You are going to see a dramatic shift in global growth downward, at least for Q1 and into Q2. Overall, equity prices are priced to perfection here in the United States. The Treasury market, though, we believe that can continue to grind lower as this perpetuates. This certainly isn't just the SARS epidemic, so this can last into Q2.
Restaurant Brands International shares higher after posting earnings that topped analyst estimates, driven by surging popularity of the Popeyes chain's chicken sandwich. Popeyes same-store sales soaring 34% in the fourth quarter. Shares of Restaurant Brands, which use the ticker QSRs in quick service restaurant, up today by 2%. Simon Property Group buying rival American shopping mall operator Taubman Centers for about $3.6 billion. We've got shares of both companies higher. Taubman, though, surging 53.2%. Simon is up now by 0.7%. And finally, Xerox Holdings increasing its offer price for HP to $24 a share. Xerox up 1.5%. HPQ Hewlett-Packard at $21.92. That's a gain of 0.9%. Recapping, S&P up by 0.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. And I'm Taylor Riggs here with Jason Kelly. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Charlie, I like how Taylor was like, hey, Charlie Pellet. Wow, that's really Charlie Pellet. That's him.
I almost was going to say, you sound surprised.
Exactly.
But,
you shouldn't be surprised, Taylor. He's here just about every day.
Always known as the voice of the subway.
Showing up
for
to
me.
that, I took the 6 train just to show up just for you today, Taylor. But
there
you know what?
You go.
Bart and Muni out in the Bay Area, they're a lot of fun, too.
Yeah, but not as good as the New York City subway. We know that, just because they don't have Charlie Pellet. All right, let's get into the business of real estate now. Natalie Wong is here with us, U.S. commercial real estate reporter for Bloomberg, here in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. So a big deal, $3.6 billion. Natalie, Simon buying Taubman. These two have been sort of circling around each other for a while. Why and how did they finally get together?
Yes, thank you. It is definitely a really, really big deal. You have two of the top high-quality mall REITs that are joining together to kind of fight the growing unease in this space. I mean, they've been trying to make a deal work for quite some time now. We know they were in talks at the end of last year, and Simon's tried to buy Taubman before, but I think it's really an indication of the growing pressures on the retail industry and, you know, the retail apocalypse that is kind of trickling out to impact some of the higher luxury mall operators that haven't nearly been hit as hard before.
Natalie, I'm so glad that you brought up the retail apocalypse, because that was my next question. I have been hearing about this so-called retail apocalypse for a decade. Amazon is not a new company. We've been talking about this for years and years. What do we mean that all these retailers are finally just now struggling? Why haven't they been able to repurpose their stores at this point by now?
You're right. It has been a long time coming, and we've heard about e-commerce and the unraveling of the impact on physical brick-and-mortar stores for a very long time now. And mainly we've seen most of that hit some of the lower quality malls in the suburbs because America just had a glut, frankly speaking, of these shopping centers. But some of the more high-quality operators like Brookfield, Simon, and Taubman have been doing well in terms of, you know, cutting back on the properties they don't need, making sure they have the right tenants. But yet we're still seeing fallout continue to happen. We're seeing Forever 21 filing for bankruptcy. We're seeing some of the other major retailers that previously had been doing good a few years earlier starting to take a hit, and that's inevitably affecting some of these larger operators.
And so, deal making done here? Or do we think there are more things, more consolidation coming?
It's hard to say. I mean, there's already been a lot of consolidation. In 2018, we saw the consolidation of 4 major retailers into 2 large companies. If Simon and Taubman, you know, if this deal is successful, that's yet to be seen. I mean, today we saw Taubman's shares rise way above the deal price after the news came out, which could indicate that investors might think another bidder could emerge. But
interesting.
I have spoken to some of the REIT analysts here, like Lindsay Dutch, who mentions that it's probably an unlikely scenario, largely because there really isn't any other competitor out there who is capable of taking over. And not to mention, Simon has already tried to take over Taubman, and they probably wouldn't be doing this again if they didn't know that they could.
Right. Really good point.
Natalie, what does the future of the mall look like? I'm thinking we repurpose it to being a gym, a rock climbing center, a warehouse to get us in that shipping and e-commerce, what we call the very hard last mile. What does the future of the mall actually look like?
That's exactly right. I mean, I've been talking to a lot of analysts who said all of these operators have to rethink what the mall is, and essentially it's about getting people to these malls and getting traffic to these malls, and that could mean having theater there, having entertainment complexes like we're seeing with the big American Mall, and that could also mean having more dining options out there to attract people. It's about creating an experience, because the reality is you can just buy whatever you want from your couch, right? So what is going to make people want to get up and go to these malls? That's what people have to rethink.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And, you point out the American dream over there in New Jersey. I mean, I think about, I live in the burbs. People still go to the malls to some extent, but they are, going to eat or going to, some sort of entertainment type of thing. Do you go to the malls, Taylor?
I think Natalie said it best. It is a, quote, experience, which is the buzzword for all millennials out here. We don't want consumer items. We want the experience. Right. And I actually do believe that will be the future of driving the foot traffic back into the malls. Yeah, no, I think that's right. All right, big deal. Today, we really appreciate the context from Natalie Wong, U.S. commercial real estate reporter for Bloomberg. She was here with me in New York. Taylor Riggs is out in San Francisco. Coming up, we're going to get into the tech world just a bit, the tech media world, YouTube. We're going to talk about a guy you've probably not heard of, but if you have a little person in your house, you may have seen his work. Joel Weber and Mark Bergen are going to be along with that story. Actually, Mark's going to be with you. Joel's going to be with me. It's like, we're doing this bi-coastal show. I like it. Taylor Riggs here with me, Jason Kelly, and here with me in New York is Bob Moon with World National Headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, here's the latest freeze frame on the Democratic presidential horse race with New Hampshire's first-in-the-nation primary just hours away.
Tomorrow could begin the end of Donald Trump.
He's the front runner nationally in a new Quinnipiac University poll taken over 5 days, ending February 9th. It shows Bernie Sanders leading with 25% of the vote nationally among Democratic voters and independent voters who lean Democratic. Well, Joe Biden has 17%, and Michael Bloomberg, the founder and majority shareholder of Bloomberg LP, parent company of Bloomberg News, has moved up to third place with 15%. Rounding out the field, Elizabeth Warren gets 14%, Pete Buttigieg has 10% and 4% support Amy Klobuchar. Margin of error plus or minus 3.8 percentage points. It's happened again. Another shooting at a Walmart store, this time in Arkansas. State police saying at least 3 people were shot at the store in the community of Forest City, west of Memphis, Tennessee. At least 3 people are reported wounded.
These are being around to Walmart. We have an officer down at the time.
That includes 2 police officers. According to dispatchers, it's unclear whether a suspect has been detained. More environmental cuts from the Trump administration. President Trump is calling for slashing funding for the country's Superfund hazardous waste cleanups. That's even as the Trump administration builds up the biggest backlog in years in unfunded toxic waste site cleanups around the country. Trump's budget proposal today calls for $113 million less funding for the popular 4-decade-old Superfund program. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
The famous five were discussing their next adventure to Cardiff. Let's visit the Millennium Centre, said Dick. The National Museum, added Julian. The castle, cried Anne. Dick jumped up. We'd better leave now. Cardiff's so far away. Relax, said George. It's faster than you think by train. Anyway, we can't go yet. You're still in your pyjamas. London to Cardiff in as little as 1 hour 42 minutes. So adventures are closer than you think. Great Western Railway. Adventures start here. Fastest train from Paddington to Cardiff Central. Terms and conditions apply.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Dribbles with the right hand. Now he attacks. Dribbles with the left hand. Drives, goes up off the glass, banks it in!
The 2020 NBA All-Star Game is live on TuneIn Premium.
Stop with the right hand! Because this thing is over!
Catch every fast break, fadeaway, and alley-oop as Team LeBron and Team Giannis go head-to-head in Chicago. Which star will shine the brightest? Who will be named this year's MVP? Find out Sunday at 8 Eastern with ESPN Radio's live coverage of the NBA All-Star Game on TuneIn. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
On the leading edge, we can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Message and data rate may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing, looking at records right now for the NASDAQ Composite Index at 95.88, up 68 points on NASDAQ, a gain right now of 0.7%. The S&P 500 Index higher by 12, up 0.4%. The Dow up 71 points, up by 0.3%. Equities were advancing as investors tried to gauge the economic damage from the spreading coronavirus while preparing for more corporate earnings, as well as tomorrow's testimony from Fed Chair Jay Powell. The 10-year up 11.30 seconds with a yield of 1.54%. Gold up 0.3%, 15.75 the ounce, and a retreat for West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.5%, holding below $50 a barrel. 49.55 on WTI, Brent 53.28, down by 2.2%. Recapping, S&P 500 Index up 12, up 0.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm Taylor Riggs here with Jason Kelly. This is Bloomberg Radio.
All right, if you've never heard that before, well, man, are you out of it? Well, probably you're not hanging around with toddlers. You don't have toddlers at your house. We're talking about CoComelon. 2.5 billion views a month. If Carol Massar were here, she would say, whoa. Mark Bergen, he was the first to meet this guy. He's never given a press interview before, first journalist, I should say, to meet this guy on the record. He's a tech reporter for Bloomberg, joins us from our 960 studio in San Francisco, right next to Taylor Riggs. Joel Weber is right next to me. He's the editor of Bloomberg Business Week. Mark, CoComelon. Wow, this is a phenomenon.
Yeah, my white whale for a while. CoComelon it's a phenomenon. It's a great, amazing story because in part because it's become a phenomenon in the past under 3 years. So this guy Jay and his wife were making these YouTube videos from the actual first year that YouTube was ever invented. They posted their first video a month before Google acquired YouTube in 2006, and they've been for a decade. We're making these nursery rhymes and like basic animation. They moved to more 3D animation in 2017. Like a number of factors, they just exploded, adding like their growth just doubled in the number of views. And all at the same time, right? YouTube had this policy of we don't have anyone under 13 on their site, but yet this demonstrates that clearly content made for kids and for young kids in particular was just wildly successful on YouTube.
But, Mark, there's plenty of other people who can kind of recognize that, too. What was the secret sauce that made CoComelon so rich?
I think one factor, we met him, he is certainly, it seems like a perfectionist, right? They spent almost 2 months on making these animated videos. So he does put a lot of time and dedication into the craft. And you can tell, the Full Screen, which is the agency they work with, so they estimate that there are about like dozens of channels that just rip off CoComelon, post it as their own. Those get tens of millions of views. So there's and YouTube has this huge ecosystem of people making sort of content farm animation, and clearly there is some care and concern put behind this, and some amount of craft. You may or may not agree with if they have a lot of educational principles, if you find the songs really annoying, but clearly there are children out there who love them.
And this is business, right? Big business now. Like, how much money are they bringing in every month?
They wouldn't share the revenue. Their estimates that it's in the high end of $11.3 million a month. Mind you, that was before. So what happened last month is YouTube is now, based on their settlement with the FTC, no longer running personal ads on videos that are made for kids, and so all of CoComelon in that case no longer has it. So they said that there's been an impact. We have in our reporting it's 50 to 60% of revenue down, and so that's part of the reason I think why they're moving now. As our story said, they're looking into toy deals.
Yeah, this is the news element. Like, so they got to diversify, right? Like, so what all are they looking to do?
Yeah, so right now they announced a partnership. There's Jazzwares, which runs this company called Wicked Cool Toys. So they'll be making a Wicked Cool plush toys for the CoComelon characters coming out later this year. They've been releasing albums. Unclear how well they're doing, but so parents now, if their kid wants to listen to the CoComelon songs on a car ride or on the plane, they can do that. They were talking about a full-length movie. I mean, they have been this channel has beyond just being anonymous, the creator has been very, very, very conservative and reluctant. He's turned down a bunch of offers. You see a lot more children's creators on YouTube going into merchandise, going to Walmart deals, to all sorts of expansion. Ryan's toy reviews being the perfect example. So there is this multi-million-dollar opportunity to sort of springboard off of YouTube.
You know, Joel and Jason, I think what we sometimes miss out here being in San Francisco is the intensity of the zeitgeist, and I'm going to steal that word from Mr. Tom Keene, about how important children's privacy is.
By the way, but sure.
So you have, of course, as we've talked about, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. Mark, big picture for Google, how do they help support and get revenue from some of these child stars while also navigating that very delicate situation of more pressure about wanting protections for some of these underage kids?
That's a really good question. It's something that YouTube's been struggling with, and Google writ large. One option, they have YouTube Kids, which is the app that's specially made. The latest numbers were about 20 million, which is just a small fraction of overall YouTube.com. So I think they're trying to push more and more people to YouTube Kids, which is much more privacy safe, much more sort of content safe and rich. They're talking about coming out with new tools for YouTube creators to make money, whether it's selling merchandise, whether it's having subscriptions for big fans, and that's been slow coming. The merchandise offer brings a whole different type of regulatory hurdles where you have sponsored content, and you have to decide. YouTube and Google has to decide along with regulators what appropriate commercial messaging for kids under 6 years old. This is sort of terrain where they have not been regulated like broadcast television, and that's finally changing.
And so, Mark, is there a sense that all of the big rivals are trying to get in on JJ's turf? What are they doing, and is he feeling it?
He certainly has not. He's been very dismissive so far. I think he talked about how he's just been turning down outside investment. I'm almost certain that he's had whether it's Netflix, Amazon, maybe even Disney, kind of knocking on his door, right? So this YouTube is pretty well positioned because they have all these their own creators, right, that have sort of like Google's IP in some sense. But I mentioned Ryan's Toy Review, which is one of the biggest unboxing and kids channels in the world. He recently had a deal with Nickelodeon, his partnership with Walmart. Because of the constraints of YouTube, you're seeing a lot of the big stars trying to sort of step away, which that could be a big problem for Google.
Unboxing videos taking over, everything is sort of like, I don't know. That's not where I expect the world to go, Jason.
No, the unboxing, I don't get it.
But you got a kid, Coco Melon, that figure into your life a lot?
Coco Melon, yeah.
You will now,
we've
though,
got
won't
some
you?
we will now. We're like throwback to like Hap Palmer, and I don't know, is that that too old for you?
Lost me there.
All right.
That's all you.
Well, you're a young hipster parent. I'm an old guy. All right. Mark Bergen, thank you so much, tech reporter for Bloomberg. This is a great story, and I know it is being well consumed by parents out there who are either going, oh, yeah, I know Coco Melon, or, oh, sweet Lord, let me never discover Coco Melon. He was out in our Bloomberg 960 studio in San Francisco alongside Taylor Riggs. Taylor, coming up, we're going to get into the worlds of bonds and economics. Your happy place?
I thought you would never ask.
I know. We've done all this like YouTube kid stuff and politics. This is what you show up for is coming up next, right? Fair to say?
Well, on a very serious note, we're waiting for Jay Powell's testimony to Congress. You have a 3-month tenure, which is the Fed's key gauge of whether a recession's coming or not. It is inverted again, now down about 1-2 basis points. So on a serious note, something we're definitely watching.
Well, thank you for being serious. I appreciate it. We were talking too much about Coco
back
Melon.
On the rails.
I know, just bringing it back to reality. Taylor Riggs, that's what she's good at. All right, that's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly, Taylor Riggs, you're on Bloomberg.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn.
First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
The comedian Louis C.K. is on tour now for the first time since his sexual misconduct against other comedians was brought to light. This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with critic Hilton Alls about how Louis C.K. is addressing the issue in his act or not addressing it. And more broadly, we'll talk about when and how a disgraced performer should come back before the public. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading on this Monday, back to work Monday. We've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing. The Dow, in fact, very close to the best level of the day. Equities are climbing as investors try to gauge the economic damage from the spreading coronavirus while preparing for more corporate earnings. S&P 500 index up 15, a gain of 0.5%. The Dow higher by 100 points, up 0.3%. NASDAQ trading at a record. It's up 78 points now. That is a gain of 0.8%. 10 years up 10/30 seconds, yield 1.54%. Gold up 0.3%, 15.75 the ounce. It is a down day for crude oil, trading below $50 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate down 1.4%, 49.61 a barrel. Brent crude 53.33. It is up by 2.3%. So stocks are advancing today. As for markets, the economy, and the coronavirus, Art Hogan is chief market strategist at National Securities.
It's hard to sort of sit back and say, okay, should we anticipate that this gets much worse than we think it's going to be, or are we getting close to the counts cresting, and perhaps we'll have more clarity? And it feels like the policy response has been so rapid that that's probably the case.
Billionaire Peter Thiel, an early investor in Facebook who once controlled 45 million shares of the social media giant, has unloaded most of his remaining stake. Last week, Facebook shares are up today by 0.1%. Simon Property Group buying rival American shopping mall operator Taubman Centers for about $3.6 billion, a combination that comes as e-commerce continues to roil brick and mortar retailer. Shares of Simon Property Group, they're up by 1%. Taubman, though, surging by 53.2%. Foxconn Technology Group has resumed some production at its main iPhone making site in Zhengzhou, according to local officials. Apple shares, they're advancing now by 0.3%. So again, recapping here, stocks close to highs of the Monday session. Now we've got the S&P advancing 16 points, up by 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's do a little Business Week economics now. Tailor-made for Taylor Riggs. Alex Harris, bond reporter for Bloomberg. You like that? Andrew Husby, also here, U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics. I'm going to turn it over to you, Taylor. What do you want to hear from these
I wanted to, I'm going to punt this on over to Miss Alex Harris. I want her to really walk me through what we are going to hear from Jay Powell in Congress. And please tell me why an inverted yield curve is different this time.
Okay.
Let's start with the yield curve, because I think Andrew can also weigh in on Powell's testimony over the next couple of days, although he doesn't look thrilled that I just pulled him into this. But yield curve, I think we've talked about it in the past when we've looked at this in terms of being a recession indicator. And I just think that the market dynamics have changed so much, and with all the global central bank accommodation, that the bond market just is a completely different signaling device. And I still think that goes for the Fed as well. And remember, they're in buying $60 billion a month in treasury bills. So you do have some distortion still from the Fed and an accommodative policy, whether you want to call reserve management purchases QE or not QE. So I think that's part of it. And then I just think, you gotta think about the risk, and it's been a substitute, and people have considered it as a substitute or a barometer for risk in the past, just given, again, the accommodative stance and where equities are. And so, it's worth thinking about that. But I just think it's funny that, other people were making these points ages ago, when the curve was inverting before, and now it seems like people are sort of picking up on that risk narrative. And then in terms of Powell this week, I anticipate, the message I think will be the same as what we heard from his latest press conference, but I think the line of questioning could actually be interesting. Last week you had the Senate Democrats writing Powell a letter asking about, the September repo market turmoil. Elizabeth Warren's name, I believe, was attached to that, and so she reiterated some of the things she had wanted to hear in the letter. She had sent Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, that this isn't an excuse to roll back bank and financial regulations here, but I envision that we'll get more balance sheet, more questions on the repo market and their policy tools in the next couple of days.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Certainly from Powell, there's only so much that Fed officials really know at the moment. They're still asking the same questions that we are. We're looking at supply chains. We're looking at the impact of confidence on the impact on the virus, on sentiment, on global manufacturing supply chains. And we're going to get some data on that this week. We're going to see some sentiment data on Friday. We're going to see small business optimism tomorrow. That might be too early to capture it, but this will all play into what Fed Chair Powell is looking at, and I think he will take that tone where he's confident in the message from the employment report on Friday. We saw a nice 30 job gain, 225,000. Yes, it was probably weather impacted in construction, but you're still looking at an economy that's generating a very healthy number of jobs over the last 6 months, and including those revisions that came out. So you're looking at, again, a pretty good picture. The economy's ready to weather this storm, but it does look like it's filtering into a number of global economies at the moment.
And what do you make of the virus impact at this point on the bond market, Alex?
I think the bond market's priced as much as it can price now. I think we're just waiting for more confirmation. I think the tendency for the bond market is to kind of get ahead of itself, and then it pulls back a little bit, and then it sits until it has more information. That's confirmable, that we know to be true, we know to be factual. And so I think at this point we're going to, again, sit in these ranges. And, that's what I thought was sort of interesting about Friday in terms of the bond market reaction, that the reaction wasn't about payrolls. It was actually about the coronavirus and any new developments there. And I think it just shows you that it just has this hold on, bond market response and the economy to a certain extent, because you're waiting to see if there's any more follow through. You're waiting to see if this is really truly contained, or where do we risk more outbreak?
Right. Yeah, we just don't know enough. Right now, and the yield curve, I would second. It is a very useful indicator, but at the moment, I would also look at to those that say, there's global factors at play. It's not a clean read on the U.S. economy. There's a lot more going on in there.
Andrew, I want to get your thoughts. I've been doing a lot of work with our Asian colleagues in Sydney and Hong Kong. We've been looking at the RBA, the RBI, the Fed, for that matter. You come out and you say the economy is ready to weather any storm. There's a lot of uncertainties with the coronavirus, but no one has a real impact to GDP yet. Yet global central banks seem to feel very dovish to me, either sitting on their hands or eager to cut rates. Square those two with me. Why so dovish if things generally feel pretty good?
Yeah, I think, the Fed did go through with a pretty aggressive shift in policy. So I would certainly say that the bias there is certainly to towards a cut. The bar to a cut would be low if conditions warrant. You'll hear that from Powell. He may or may not address some of the hypotheticals, but I think some of that is a reflection of, again, the market having moved in that direction, done some of the easing for the Fed. If you look at long-term rates, and also if you look at the Fed itself, where we are now compared to where they thought they'd be right now is significantly easier. So I wouldn't look at the Fed as necessarily being, not accommodative right now. They would view themselves, and I think we would view them as well. We do view them as well as being, still pressing on the accelerator pedal, not tapping the brakes. Certainly.
Final word to you, Alex Harris.
Oh, do we see the White House's budget that was released?
We did.
Lots of spending, lots and lots of debt. You
Yeah.
know, what is it? It's a lot,
Yeah.
and again, these are things that are going to have repercussions, whether long lasting, and again, it's only a pipe dream. But I think the takeaway is, we got more debt coming. Spending is going to continue to go. And that's what matters, is that debt doesn't matter. Deficits don't matter. It's just going to be spending and spending and spending.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, Justin Sink, our White House reporter, pointed this out earlier in the show. I mean, there is a certain amount of this being a political document, right? And so we'll see what the Congress is willing to do. But, this obviously is a Congress that enjoys making this president happy.
Well, and I just think that, again, the big takeaway is, regardless of whether or not this is a pipe dream, they love debt.
Yes.
And that's what matters, is that
point.
those deficits are just going to continue to rise, and that's going to weigh on the bond market.
All right. Alex Harris, thank you so much. Andrew Husby, thank you as well. Let's get over to Bob Moon for some world and national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, thank you. President Trump continues to hammer away at Democrats, even as he conceded today that he needs their support to win passage of the budget proposals he put forward for the budget year ahead. He cited a bill aimed at reducing drug prices.
We can reduce drug prices unbelievably easily and substantially, but we have to get Democrat votes.
Actually, House Democrats already passed a bill aimed at reducing drug prices, but it has not been introduced for a vote in the Republican-controlled Senate. And while that remark suggested a conciliatory tone, his appeal for Democratic support didn't last long at a White House event today.
They've been so focused on something else and wasting a lot of people's time, although my poll numbers have been driven way the hell up, so that's one way to do it, I guess. But they have been so focused on the impeachment hoax that they haven't had time to do anything else. But we're ready to go with a big infrastructure bill if they're ready to approve it.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi made it clear her party is in no mood to compromise. She's already condemning what she calls Trump's savage cuts to programs Americans rely upon. More offices and stores in Beijing and other parts of China finally reopened today after the Lunar New Year break was extended to discourage travel and contain the new coronavirus. But many workers and shoppers appeared to stay home. The outbreak has now infected more than 40,000 people globally and killed over 900, with the vast majority of cases in China. Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign today filed a request for a partial recanvass of the Iowa caucus results, citing mathematical errors and inconsistencies that it says would change the results. This after Pete Buttigieg was declared the leader. Global news 24 hours a day, on air, and a quick take on Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Europe, stability, and constant evolution. Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Your job is going to be even more important, I'd argue.
Experience with consistent information.
Would it be a policy mistake if global central banks signaled a more dovish stance?
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
So how do you tackle that? What's your mechanism?
Weekdays at 1 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Open calendar. What's my schedule looking like?
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an emergency flash flood between Park and First Street.
What? No, that doesn't work. I'm busy then. Decline. Decline.
Floods don't exactly work around your schedule. Disasters don't plan ahead. But you can. It starts with talking to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. So don't wait. Communicate. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Are you interested Interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you are thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the
I am a force for good.
I am a force for courage.
And for calm.
I am a force for safety.
For fairness. For leadership.
I am a force for the future.
For compassion.
For my community.
I am a police officer.
And I am a force for all.
Be one of the 20,000 new police officers and be a force for all that you believe in. Search Join the Police.
Look at that. A riveting quest. A glorious opportunity. A scratch card. Yet he remains unfazed by the challenge. Wavering at nothing.
Miss, please keep it down. We're in the quiet area.
Sorry. Here we are. The moment of truth. As he reaches...
Instant excitement with scratch cards from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Search Dream Big, Play Small. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
What do you do to be an everyday superhero, like Dan?
So my baby boy Ben and me just wanted to share what we do to look after the environment. We put the wet wipes we use in the bin instead of down the loo. It would be pretty nasty if that lot ended up blocking our pipes.
Wet wipes and nappies block thousands of pipes every year. Save our sewers, rivers and seas by putting them in the bin where they belong. Visit thameswater.co.uk/bin it. Together, we can care for the environment.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
The comedian Louis C.K. is on tour now for the first time since his sexual misconduct against other comedians was brought to light. This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with critic Hilton Alls about how Louis C.K. is addressing the issue in his act or not addressing it. And more broadly, we'll talk about when and how a disgraced performer should come back before the public. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
Start hearing more of what you want. Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Entrance from next to your office without having to feed them.
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks higher. In fact, the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ at or near the best level of the day. NASDAQ at a record. Let's head right over to the first word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. That's right. U.S. stocks trading higher today as tech outperforms. Dow's currently up 125 points. S&Ps are up 17. NASDAQ climbs by 86. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.55%. Gold trading higher by 4. Small caps rise 2 points. And 10 of the main 11 S&P sectors are also trading higher, led by gains in consumer discretionary and tech. Only energy fell. Nasdaq biotechs rise 1%. Transports are a little changed. Semis jump 1.2%, and the VIX is lower by 3%. Leaders to the upside in the Dow, Boeing, Microsoft, and Visa, while ExxonMobil and Walmart led to the downside. In other news, Slack soared as much as 21%. On a report, IBM is moving all employees to its platform and wrapping things up, DaVita reports after the bell. Live from the first breaking news desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie.
And we thank you very much, Bill. To hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type Squawk, SQUAWK, on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Within the sound of silence.
Well, on that note, I want to bring in Andrew Brown. He is an editorial director of the Bloomberg New Economy Forum. Prior to joining Bloomberg, he was the China editor, senior columnist, and correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. And I mentioned China because that is so much of where Andrew's background is. And so, Andrew, it's great to have you at moments like this when we talk about sort of the nationalism and what is going on in China as you saw the early days of this Wuhan coronavirus start to spread. I really want you to give us sort of the tone on the ground of you had this 34-year-old doctor start to notice this virus, tried to speak out against it, and I think he was silenced and sort of shut down. How much of that is sort of just the tone in China, that is just the way things are? Give us the tone on the ground.
Right. So, as you say, you've got this Dr. Li Wenliang. Early on in the crisis, early on in this epidemic, he's starting to see this incredibly disturbing pattern of human-to-human infections. So he jumps onto a private WeChat group with other medical professionals, and he's putting into this WeChat group medical and scientific facts that he thinks his colleagues should know. Now, you say, they shut him down, they silenced him. They didn't just silence him. They actually take him down to the police station, and it's like something out of the Cultural Revolution. They now want to humiliate him. They want to get him to admit that he has made a mistake. They want him to recant, right? So this is now the impulse of the party isn't just to silence him, it's to punish him. And so, the point I think the wider point here is that censorship in China isn't just a China problem. Yeah. It's a global problem, and you're looking at in a globally connected economy. You have a country, China, which has open borders to flows of people and goods and closes its border to information and data. And this is a huge anomaly now, and it's all of our risks. So, when Li Wenliang's warning is ignored, and he's punished. I mean, this means that the global community doesn't have access to the information that it needs, and we see. So this is the impulse. The interesting thing now is the public backlash that you're seeing against this.
And what does that backlash look like, and how will it play out in your estimation?
You now have a national conversation in China about freedom of speech in a way that you haven't had really since 1989 and the pro-democracy protests then. People are realizing Tiananmen Square. This is not a simply a political issue now. This is a life and death issue for Chinese people, and it's taken on a real urgency. And it, by the way, this strikes right at the heart of Xi Jinping's political agenda, which is information control. Right. And it works in several different ways. It's not just suppressing information, it's positively expecting the media and everybody associated with the media to generate positive news, good news. They call positive energy, all right, which in this case obviously has worked against the interest of getting the scientific facts out and against the interest of transparency, which of course is critical to controlling an epidemic and to ensuring that you don't have panic.
Andy, I think it's one thing to be having a conversation about it, and like you said, this is the beginning of a broader conversation, but it's one thing to actually create change. What are the real odds of creating change within China?
The Communist Party, despite what people think, can be, when it's presented with a real challenge to its legitimacy or indeed even to its existence, has found ways to modify its policies, its behavior, has found ways to adapt. With so many people in China now furious, I mean, just raw anger. They're sitting at home, they're stewing on this, they haven't been out, a lot of people don't have an income, the factories are going back to work, but schools aren't reopening. What do I do with my kids? What about childcare? I mean, this is really hitting home to people in a very, very personal way. And I honestly believe it cannot help. The Communist Party is going to have to, in some way, in some form, address that anger.
And 30 seconds left. What do we hear? What do you expect we'll hear in the short term from President Xi on all this? He's been out and about a little bit more.
He's been out and about more. There has been, in the initial stages of the epidemic, they were very reluctant to have a dialogue with the global medical community. They didn't want the CDC in, even the WHO. They're now starting to open up somewhat. And on the Li Wenliang doctor story itself, they're obviously trying to co-opt the narrative. They're trying to present him as a hero, that here's the guy who was on the front lines. He gave his life in the struggle against the coronavirus, talking far, far less, of course, about the suspected cover-up and about the humiliation and about the censorship in the early stages.
All right. Well, thought-provoking and disturbing. Thank you so much for bringing us this. Andy Brown, editorial director for Bloomberg New Economy, here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Coming up, we are going to get Dave Wilson's chart of the day. It's a good one. You're going to want to stay tuned for that. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are finally getting some traction in the final hour after spending most of the day struggling with narrow gains. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 112, the S&P 500 up 17, the Nasdaq Composite up 84. Amazon wants to question President Trump about its losing bid for a $10 billion Pentagon contract. Amazon says the president has a well-documented personal animus toward Amazon and CEO Jeff Bezos. The contract went to Microsoft. Harry's is left standing at the altar. Edgewell Personal Care, the maker of Schick razors and blades, has called off its $1.3 billion acquisition of shaving startup Harry's. It comes a week after the government sued to block the deal. This year's Oscars broadcast won't win any ratings awards. ABC's broadcast of last night's Academy Awards drew just over 23.5 million viewers. That's the smallest audience in the show's history. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council. Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The 2020 NBA All-Star Game is live on TuneIn Premium. Catch every fast break, fadeaway, and alley-oop as Team LeBron and Team Giannis go head-to-head in Chicago.
Deep three, and in! Oh, man! 5 to shoot, LeBron long three, good!
Which star will shine the brightest? Who will be named this year's MVP? Find out Sunday at 8 Eastern with ESPN Radio's live coverage of the NBA All-Star Game on TuneIn. Search Premium to upgrade today.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade. Are evolving to keep ahead of the curve. At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Experts like to be part of Bloomberg surveillance. What does the new Europe look like? For the same reason we're recommending it to you.
Everything you thought would happen is happening.
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
And coming up, we're going to check in with Dave Wilson Taylor for his chart of the day. I really like this one. It's got a little tech telecom connection. I think you're going to be into it.
Can't wait to hear about it, Justin.
Don't sound too excited. All right, let's get to Charlie Pellet first. He's got an update on the trade. Hey, Charlie.
Well, hello there, Jason Kelly, and hello, Taylor. We have got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing. NASDAQ at a record. 28 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell on this back-to-work Monday here with the S&P up 16 now, a gain of 0.5%. The Dow pushing higher by 116 points, up 0.4%. NASDAQ up 85. That is a gain of 0.9%. So equities are advancing as investors look past the potential economic hit from the spreading coronavirus to prepare for more corporate earnings. Tobias Lefkovich is chief U.S. equity strategist at Citigroup Global Markets.
We're thinking our markets will be up about 5% and consistent with about earnings growth, although maybe that earnings growth will be impacted negatively from the coronavirus issues. So we're looking at 33.75 year-end for the S&P 500.
And right now, the S&P is at 33.44, up today by 0.5%. Again, the Dow up 120, up 0.4. NASDAQ up 86, up by 0.9%. Xerox Holdings increasing its offer price for HP Inc. to $24 a share, boosting that bid by $2 a share. Xerox up 1.4% today, and Hewlett-Packard Inc. moving higher today by just about 0.9%. Restaurant Brands International shares, they're up by 2.5%. Restaurant Brands advancing after posting earnings that topped analyst estimates. Simon Property Group has agreed to buy rival American shopping mall operator Taubman Centers for about $3.6 billion, a combination that comes as e-commerce continues to roil brick-and-mortar retailer. Shares of Simon Property Group, they're up by 1.3%, but look at Taubman surging today by 53%. Recapping, gold up 0.2%, crude down 1.5%, the 10-year, the yield there 1.55%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks a lot. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg. All right, little Bruce here on a Monday morning. The price you pay, Dave Wilson. I really like this chart. Very on the news and appropriate for our tech-laden colleague there, Taylor Riggs, out in San Francisco. Tell us about it.
I was just struck by what U.S. Attorney General William Barr had to say the other day when it comes to sort of the horse race for 5G wireless technology. Now, the U.S. certainly has its issues with China's Huawei, one of the leaders in that industry. So Barr suggested that the U.S. government should put its money behind, Sweden's Ericsson and Finland's Nokia, because they're the biggest competitors of Huawei in this 5G area when it comes to being able to set up the networks. That's what they specialize in, wireless equipment. So I went back and looked at the history of these companies in terms of performance relative to their peers. And to define that, I used the MSCI World Technology Index. Well, you find out that the industry group has been up something like more than sixfold, going back to March 2009, which is sort of the commonly accepted date when the current bull market in stocks began. And then you looked at Ericsson. It was up 16%. Then you looked at Nokia. It was down 45%. These stocks have been among the worst performers that were in this MSCI World Technology Index throughout the 11-year period. So, and when you think about the government investing in companies, this sort of analysis becomes relevant. Let's go back a decade or so. I mean, the U.S. just did fine with the financial companies, the banks that it got behind, bailed out. I mean, those investments have essentially paid off, in a big way. With the automakers, not so great in terms of performance. But if you're going to put your money behind any company, the taxpayers ought to see something from that beyond just, sort of protecting the technology. Because if you're, in essence, going to set industrial policy in terms of who you do business with, then without the financial rewards, it just doesn't really, kind of measure up.
It is sort of an amazing idea even to put out there in 2020, right? In America?
Absolutely. And the idea that you can't invest in American companies to do this. Right? They're not talking about, Qualcomm or whatever, because there's really no one in that business. Now, Nokia bought several years back Lucent Technologies, which is big here in the U.S., obviously. So, there are connections, but it's not like you have companies that are based here. It's just they're so intent, at least, arguably from what William Barr had to say, they're so intent on fending off the Chinese that they'll go to whoever else will help them do that, whether it's really kind of in the best interest of the American taxpayer or not.
Right. And Taylor, you've I'm sure dealt a lot with this sort of broader issue on your show, right?
Well, I was going to say last Friday we spoke with Mike Rogers, the former House Intelligence Committee chairman, and he said this actually isn't a bad idea, but another stance you could take if you didn't want to take a, let's say, controlling position in a foreign company like Nokia or Ericsson, give them grants and R&D, try to help them in other ways, and then you can also still help out some of the American companies as well, even though, yes, we know that we are behind. Is there any talk about that, perhaps, Dave, that you're hearing?
There are any kinds of possibilities when it comes to this, Taylor. And clearly this was kind of a trial balloon that was floated out there to sort of see the response, to be able to put it in a market perspective and understand that these two companies, when you look at this technology index, are among the 5 worst performers over the past 11 years. Well, you could argue that they need all the help they can get from that perspective. At the same time, you have to wonder exactly what should the U.S. do, if anything, to get involved.
Yeah, it is sort of amazing to consider this, but also, just a reminder of how complicated this has become. And also, Dave, a reminder even, and I know it's not necessarily directly related, but amid the coronavirus, the whole supply chain, the whole way that the globe is interconnected comes into question yet again. Dave Wilson, thank you so much. We will see you right after the close of trading.
And may I point out that if you haven't seen this chart already, folks, I'll get it to you. I'll get the explanation that goes with it to you. I'll get everything else I do to you. Just send me an email, dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
All right, Dave, we will see you right after the close of trading for your stock of the day. Coming up, we're going to get you to the close of trading with Hillary Kramer. She's going to be with me here in New York City. Taylor Riggs still with me out in San Francisco before she runs off to do, her big important technology show. Speaking of technology, let's get to world and national headlines from Bob Moon. He's here in New York City. Hey, Bob.
Jason, almost a week after President Trump's impeachment acquittal, although numerous senators from his own Republican Party said his actions involving Ukraine were still wrong, Trump keeps pressing his efforts to turn up political dirt from that country. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports Trump has encouraged his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, to keep probing Ukraine and turn over any information he obtains to the Justice Department.
At a news conference, Attorney General William Barr was asked about what he might be getting from Giuliani.
We have to be very careful with respect to any information coming from the Ukraine. There are a lot of agendas in the Ukraine. There are a lot of cross currents, and we can't take anything we receive from the Ukraine at face value.
Barr said there are procedures in place for intelligence agencies to evaluate the worth of anything Giuliani or anyone else sends in. At the White House, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
One day they'll slip up, says the FBI's deputy director, and when they do, David Bowditch vowed today U.S. authorities will be there waiting to bring them to justice. Waiting because the 4 Chinese suspects in the largest data breach ever involving a U.S. credit reporting agency, Equifax, in 2017, are out of U.S. reach for now. Bowditch says these computer intrusions are all too familiar.
You think, well, there goes my credit card number, my Social Security number, my bank account information, and you sign up for another year of free credit card monitoring information. We cannot think like that in this country. American businesses cannot be complacent about protecting their data.
Hackers accessed Equifax data, including social security numbers, driver's license numbers, and addresses from almost 150 million Americans. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Dribbles with the right hand. Now he attacks. Dribbles with the left hand. Drives, goes up off the glass, makes it in!
The 2020 NBA All-Star Game is live on TuneIn Premium.
Stop with the right hand, because this thing is over!
Catch every fast break, fadeaway, and alley-oop as Team LeBron and Team Giannis go head-to-head in Chicago. Which star will shine the brightest? Who will be named this year's MVP? Find out Sunday at 8 Eastern with ESPN Radio's live coverage of the NBA All-Star Game on TuneIn. Search Premium to upgrade today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Dad, it's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now, make a face like it just smells something bad.
Visit fatherhood.gov, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, Number 1 in operational support. Number 1 in compensation. Number 1 in professional development support. And number 1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA-SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Vattel Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor, is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. They're all higher right now. S&P up 18, up 0.6% at 33.45. NASDAQ on track for a record close. Right now, NASDAQ is up 89 points at 96. 609, up 0.9%, and should point out that in the year-to-date column, NASDAQ is now showing a year-to-date gain of 7.1%. The Dow up 118 points, up by 0.4%. 10-year up 7/30 seconds with a yield of 1.55%. We've got gold up 0.2%, $15.73 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.6%, below $50 a barrel at $49.54. Recapping, NASDAQ at a record up 0.9%, S&P up 0.5, the Dow up by 0.4. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. Who's gonna drive you home? Honey, please, I'll do the driving. Drive on. Excuse me, I want to drive. Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
All right, it's time for the Drive to the Close. Now, Hillary Kramer is back with us, President and Chief Investment Officer of A&G Capital Research, but more importantly, author of a new bestseller. It's called Game Changer Investing: How to Profit from Tomorrow's Billion-Dollar Trends. She joins me here in New York City. Taylor Riggs still with me out in San Francisco. Two things. First, great to see you.
Pleasure to be here, Jason. Thank you.
And second, congrats. This is huge. Love the book. It looks great. Can't wait to read it. You were nice enough to bring me a copy. So let's start with that if we can. Why this book? Why now?
There is such a need to understand the future. Everyone really is busy looking back, and not just the FANG. I mean, that's kind of getting to be an old conversation, but just, cybersecurity and AI and, driverless cars. But the real truth is, what does the future really look like, and how do you make money off of it? Where should you really be positioned? And I took all of the big landscape, the macro, and said, what are the big trends? And so therefore, where should you be in the future? And that took me everywhere from truly personalized therapeutics, medications, customized to a person's own DNA and immunological system is really the future. The personification of pets. Everyone knows I love Chewy.com,
right.
Online pet food and pet vet care. Well, because that's the direction that we're going. So that's the reason why now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Hillary, so walk me through that, because I'm in San Francisco, and so I was surprised to hear you say everyone thinks the future is AI, driverless cars, and cybersecurity, because I'm in San Francisco, and that's what everyone says the future is. So if that's not it, in your opinion, what is it?
The future is the next step beyond. So AI, is AI NVIDIA? So I think maybe that's the better way for me to specify it. Yeah, what is AI? You know, the sort of like usual suspects, you know, or is there a next generation coming? You know, where are we really going to be? You know, the market is just getting very, very complacent. And a matter of fact, on the topic of where we stand in the macro environment, just think of coronavirus for a minute. Anything that's software, which means there wouldn't be any kind of issue with touching something, you know, it's the opposite of a Royal Caribbean, you know, just keeps going up. Like, no one seems to care that Intel, you know, I mean, Intel is a great company, yes, but the stock keeps rising, but yet it could have supply chain disruption. Or you take a company like ServiceNow. Again, the market has a simple view of the world and reacts in that sense and just looks at the players immediately in front of us. ServiceNow was a $210 stock on October 23rd. They make a management change, and Jason, it's about $340 right now, yeah. $342.
All right, so what else are you looking at in this market right now? We always love talking names with you.
I think Goldman Sachs is still the absolute way to go. I think we're going to be...
Even as it feels like every single top executive, I'm exaggerating, seems to be leaving. I mean, they've had this like brain drain over the past couple weeks.
Yeah, but they have invested so much into their people. I mean, they have understood, they got that whole concept of the war for talent down really well. Of course, everyone's leaving because there's just been so much money sloshing around. But, you know, just think of it this way. Stocks are at an all-time high, you know, because interest rates are at an all-time low. Yeah. Even if it seems like nothing can disrupt this market, but if indeed it does, Goldman Sachs is hedged on every level. Just even in their restructuring, their ability on M&A, they have really filled the void of the companies that have just shrunk down to nothing. The Barclays, UBS, Deutsche Bank, the French game. You know, French banks are just out of the game completely. So I think one could just really do well with a Goldman Sachs. I do worry that this is what everyone knows I'm this bull. In my book, I'm standing next to a bull. But at the same time, we're 11 years into this bull market, right? So I am seeing this vicious cycle that could start to happen, which is if let's say President Trump, you know, is like, he's just one thumb pressed away from having a bad tweet, let's say. Yeah. And then it looks like Bernie Sanders. And then, you know, the economy, then people expect it. The economy goes down, and that's when the algorithms take over. Basically, everyone's going to just pile into the utilities. So you want to be in a company like, everyone's going to look for safety. Let me finish my thought. Everyone's going to look for safety. So you want to be in companies that there's safety, but yet there's growth in there. Like, I really do love the utility AES, Virginia-based utility, dividend yield that's nice and consistent, but at the same time developing the big battery farms, and they're in software, demand response. AES is just a really great one. They've taken their money and made sure to be more than just a regulated utility. People are going to look, of course, Hormel, the concept of spam, that goes without saying. HRL, right? Everyone thinks we're going to end up, you know, the market's going to go down. We're going to end up, you know, living in caves.
Yeah.
Right.
Eating spam. That sounds good to you, right, Taylor? You're a big spam eater.
Oh, yeah, you know it. Hillary, I want to touch on your idea of risk here. Everyone in portfolio management teaches you buy a stock to behave like a stock. You buy a bond to behave like a bond. You don't buy a stock with bond-like characteristics because that's not what it's supposed to do. That's why you have bonds. What is your take on that?
Tell the Fed that. Tell the Fed. What, you know, $5 trillion have gone out of these like negative interest rate, you know, yielding bonds. Well, the bottom line is this. The game has changed. Just think of what our Federal Reserve is doing. Okay, we're at 11th year of economic expansion. I called it a bull market, but yet the Fed will do absolute anything possible as if we're in desperate times, as if we're on the brink of an absolute destruction of our stock exchange, our entire equity system. This whole thing with these repo agreements you hear about, creating liquidity, all of that. The bottom line is everyone's forced into the equity market, into the stock market. So exactly that point is that classic, I learned at Wharton in the first Jeremy Siegel finance class,
right.
Of course, but stocks for the long run. But in this case, it may be stocks for the long run, and some people are going to have to wait on returns a few years from now.
All right. Always good to catch up with you. Hillary Kramer, President, Chief Investment Officer of A&G Capital Research. Her new book, Game Changer Investing, How to Profit from Tomorrow's Billion-Dollar Trends. It's a bestseller already. You want to get it. It's a great, great read. She's one of our smartest analysts on everything stocks. We love having her here. All right, coming up, we are going to get to the close of trading here on a Monday. Still a lot of green on that screen. The NASDAQ is up more than 1%. This is Bloomberg.
It was a Sunday morning when I jumped on the tube
and decided to pop down to Greenwich via
a large indoor jungle.
And when I got there, I was captivated by a sparkling,
scary dinosaur just standing there right in front of me.
So off we went to Wembley Park
to look at the colourful fish.
Tap into the wonderful world of Off-Peak London. Travel in zones 2 to 6 for £1.50. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
£1.50 is an adult off-peak pay-as-you-go fare for a journey not going via Zone 1 on Tube, DLR and most London Overground services. Always touch in and out with the same card or device to pay the right fare.
3, 2, 1, lift off!
What have you done with my OCT eye scanner? I'm supposed to be doing an eye scan with Mrs. Green.
We launched it, like you said.
Well, I meant launch it to the public, not on a rocket.
Oh.
Tell them how it takes a hospital-grade 3D image that could help detect eye conditions up to 4 years earlier.
Oh, sugar.
And that it's available at Specsavers.
Oh, and now also in outer space. Introducing our most advanced eye exam with OCT scans. Search Specsavers OCT to find out more. Charge applies. OCT available at selected stores.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. A move higher for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. In fact, stocks closed at the best level of the day. A record for the NASDAQ Composite Index. NASDAQ surging 108 points today, up by 1.1%. S&P 500 Index up 24. That's a gain of 0.7%, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average rallied 175 points, up by 0.6%. Again, the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing to the best level of the session. Equities climbed as investors look past the potential economic damage from the spreading coronavirus to prepare for more corporate earnings. They are also awaiting tomorrow's testimony from Fed Chair Jay Powell. So the S&P 500 Index climbing, most sectors advancing. Hillary Kramer is President and Chief Investment Officer at A&G Capital. She was our guest moments ago right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
The market is just getting very, very complacent. And a matter of fact, on the topic of where we stand in the macro environment, just think of coronavirus for a minute. Anything that's software, which means there wouldn't be any kind of issue with touching something, it's the opposite of a Royal Caribbean, just keeps going up.
Restaurant Brands International shares higher today after posting earnings that topped analyst estimates, driven by surging popularity of the Popeyes chain's chicken sandwich. It uses the ticker symbol QSR, as in quick service restaurant. Shares up today by 2.8%. Simon Property Group buying rival American shopping mall operator Taubman Centers for about $3.6 billion, a combination that comes as e-commerce continues to roil brick and mortar retailer. Simon Property Group up 1.5%, but look at Taubman, surging today by 53%. Foxconn Technology Group has resumed some production at its main iPhone-making site in Zhengzhou, China. Apple shares advancing today by 0.5%. Gold up 0.2%. Crude oil down 1.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Move around. Motion creates the motion.
I feel the earth move under my feet.
You move like they do. I've never seen anyone move that fast.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Something's called movers and shakers. They cost a little more, but that name cracked me up.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers, with Carol Mazur and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, it is time for your Movers and Shakers. Jason Kelly here in New York City. Taylor Riggs out in San Francisco. Another record day, as you just heard Charlie Pellet mention. Let's go down a level, Taylor, if we can, on the S&P. You had 353 names up, 151 down, one unchanged. Your biggest gainer, talk to me about AMD, tech lady.
Yeah, this is very interesting. So I'm taking a look at shares of AMD, best performing stock in the S&P 500. You're up 5%. This is after unconfirmed, and I should say unconfirmed reports that they could replace Intel in Apple's Mac devices. Now, Jason, you know, the rivalry between AMD and Intel has been going on for years and years, and Intel is still the leader. But there has been in the last year or so some momentum from AMD, given that Intel has faced some supply chains. So this unconfirmed report is certainly giving AMD a boost, and then that folds over into some of the other Apple suppliers that frankly are just shrugging off all of the concerns about the supply chain. Qorvo and Skyworks are rated a new overweight by Wells Fargo. That analyst is saying he's going to initiate coverage of Qorvo with a $135 price target. He's saying demand on all of these end products are going to allow the company to grow revenue even in a flat mobile device market.
Wow.
So really you're getting a lot of big boosts for a lot of these Apple suppliers.
Right. Well, and just taking a look at the Philadelphia Stock Exchange Semiconductor Index, the SOX index on the Bloomberg, it was up 1.5% today, and that's a big move upwards. And huge. This was after Friday where you saw that big sell-off, and you obviously are more aware of this than I am. There were some concerns on Friday, especially going into the weekend. What's the next leg down potentially with the coronavirus? But obviously some optimism for all the reasons that you pointed out. Clearly part of what's driving the SOX today is the AMD move, right?
Right. Well, and the forward PE ratio of the SOX is more than the S&P 500. So there have been concerns that the SOX index and all these chip makers are coming in with very, very full valuations. But frankly, the mobile market's doing better than we thought. 5G is going to be a killer at the end of the year, killer in a good way, and so that's really giving.
You're talking all West Coast like killer, dude, right? Getting back to your California roots. I get it. It's fine. It's fine.
Giving all of these companies a really big boost of growth in the second half of the year. Although, Jason, the big wild card, of course, is any disruption within the 5G market from the coronavirus. But again, if it's transitory, then it doesn't affect second half 2020 results.
Talk to me about FedEx.
This is a very interesting story. Now, last week, FedEx said that they were working on creating some new efficiencies and streamlining their operations. They're going to combine ground and express in the last mile, which is the most expensive and the hardest to do within the e-commerce business.
Yeah.
So that you don't have a ground and an express going with different packages to the same home. So they're creating a lot of efficiencies. So on this news, UBS came out today, raised FedEx to a buy, lifted the price target to $187 from $161. He's saying, frankly, there's low expectations, but the steps that they've taken to improve this cost structure really supports a favorable outlook, and they can lift their profit margins now in that express business. And at the same time, the ground business margins are also going to stabilize. And then, of course, bringing those together should be really beneficial.
Right.
I think some analysts want to see the execution on that, but for now, the report is getting some pretty good news.
All right, one last name to mention. You heard Charlie mention it briefly. The deal making in the REIT sector, the mall REIT sector, Taubman Centers up 53%, $18.45. And you do wonder, and I think this was pointed out earlier, if maybe another bidder is coming in, we could have a bidding war for this name. Let's take a quick look, if we can, at the VIX. Volatility down a bit, down a touch, 2.8% closing at 15.03. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson.
Open up the door, it's Dave. Who? Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson. Dave Wilson back with us with your stock today. What are you looking at?
Diamond Offshore Drilling, Jason. It's a company that leases drilling rigs to oil and gas producers. The company owns 15 rigs. Some of them can operate in as much as 12,000 feet of water and drill down as far as 40,000 feet. Diamond Offshore traces its history back to 1953. The company was taken public in 1995 by Lowe's, the Tisch family's holding company, which still has a 53% stake. The ticker is DO. Diamond Offshore shares peaked in December 2007 during a record-setting surge in oil prices. Since then, the shares have plummeted as much as 98% as overseas drilling or offshore drilling has largely given way to land-based fracking. Diamond Offshore's fourth quarter results came out today. They showed a 9th straight quarterly loss, along with a cash outflow. Now, the company said more cash may come out of the business through the end of 2021 because the industry just has too many rigs, and that's held down rental prices. This idea of negative cash flow didn't sit well with investors. Diamond Offshore at one point was down almost 17% in today's trading. Stock hit a record low and closed with a loss of 9.3%. In an interesting contrast, Jason and Taylor, Lowe's, that majority owner, was up 4.8%. Their results went over a whole lot better than Diamond Offshore's.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily, well, who knows? Stock investors know more than I do, right?
Well, they own CNA Financial, they own a bunch of other businesses, and some of them did just fine, even if Diamond Offshore didn't.
All right. Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Always appreciate that. We'll catch up with you tomorrow for all your good insights. Let's do some world and national news headlines now. Ed Baxter from San Francisco. What's up?
Hey, Jason. Hey, Taylor. Hey, 4 members of the Chinese military have been charged with hacking into the networks of Equifax Credit Reporting Agency. Attorney General William Barr says they spent weeks inside.
The hackers obtained the names, birth dates, and social security numbers of nearly 150 million Americans.
And driver's licenses of at least 10 million Americans. President Trump's $4.8 trillion budget for the upcoming fiscal year proposes billions more in funding for defense.
We're going to have a very good budget with a very powerful military budget because we have no choice.
But would bring steep cuts to social programs, and analysts say an increase in the deficit. Residents of Beijing have been cleared to go back to work officially, but the streets are quiet, and Bloomberg's Sophie Kamarudin says workers are not apparently headed back.
We are seeing plenty of people still opting to stay at home, so that is seeing Foxconn, for example, just resume some of its operations with the number of workers that have returned from the break still not exactly known.
Meanwhile, the World Health Organization is watching.
The WHO says it's still too early to call the peak of this outbreak, saying they're monitoring 10 provinces outside of Hubei as they are seeing a pickup in cases there.
Now, the day before the New Hampshire primary and polling stays tight, notable change in the Sanders campaign, and that it's saying now he is in the best position to beat Donald Trump. Meanwhile, Bloomberg's Craig Gordon says the president is headed to New Hampshire, and people have already begun lining up.
On the sidewalk, outside, kind of winding around the building, literally hundreds, if not thousands of people already trying to get in for a rally that doesn't start for several hours.
And the primary is tomorrow. Global news 24 hours a day. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg.
They don't just talk to the most important people.
Can you give us your broad sense of the main driver behind the latest weakness?
They talk with the most interesting people.
When you talk to your clients, are they taking this seriously?
Lisa Abramowitz.
What's going to be the main driver of growth?
Paul Sweeney.
What did you take away from those Amazon numbers last night?
Bloomberg Markets.
Is it as ominous this time around?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative, and that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Dribbles with the right hand. Now he attacks. Dribbles with the left hand. Drives, goes up off the glass, makes it in!
The 2020 NBA All-Star Game is live on TuneIn Premium.
Stop with the right hand, because this thing is over!
Catch every fast break, fadeaway, and alley-oop as Team LeBron and Team Giannis go head-to-head in Chicago. Which star will shine the brightest? Who will be named this year's MVP? Find out Sunday at 8 Eastern with ESPN Radio's live coverage of the NBA All-Star Game on TuneIn. Search Premium to upgrade today.
The Iowa caucuses were an epic fail, a fiasco, and an invitation for suspicion.
No matter what the results are now, they're going to be questioned in terms of their authenticity.
How it got this system in the first place, and other tales from primary land on this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and tune in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet, just getting the latest numbers out of Davita. It reported adjusted earnings per share from continuing operations for the fourth quarter that beat the highest analyst estimate. Shares up now by about 2.5%. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all moving higher today. In fact, records for the S&P 500 index, also a record for the NASDAQ Composite Index. We begin with the Dow up 174 points, up 0.6%. S&P up 24, now at 3352, up 0.7%. The NASDAQ Composite Index rallying 1.1% today, up by 107 points. 10-year up 6/30 seconds, yield 1.56%. Gold up 0.2%, 15.72 the ounce, and a pullback for West Texas Intermediate crude, tumbling 1.4%, closing below $50 a barrel at $49.60. Recapping, stocks pushing higher to a record. S&P 500 index up by 24 points. That is a gain of 0.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio. All right, so one of the more interesting data initiatives here at Bloomberg over the past few years has been the Gender Equality Index. And here to explain to us what it is, and maybe more importantly, what it tells us this year is Shaheen Contractor, ESG analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. She's here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Jason.
All right, so this is really important overall, and also a really interesting window into a problem that we talk about all the time. What did we learn this time around?
So if we dig into the data behind Bloomberg's Gender Equality Index, we see that while there is a focus on gender leadership and that we're seeing some progress on that, the pay gap really still remains in the shadows. In fact, if you look at the data, about 39% of companies have some kind of action plan on female leadership, but it's only 18% when we look at action plan on the gender pay gap. So there's that divide over there.
So, sorry, say that again. So basically, there are a number of people who say that they're doing it, but then they're not actually doing it?
So there's a number of companies that have an action plan on female leadership.
Oh, on leadership versus pay.
Yeah,
interesting.
Right. There's that divide over
and
there.
so what do you make of that? Like, how do you break that down?
Well, it's really two things. Now, the gender pay gap is in part this issue about promoting women into higher paying roles.
Right.
And what's interesting, if we want to address this, we find that bringing women out of the bottom pay quartile has much more of an impact on reducing the pay gap than promoting women into the top pay quartile. So it's elevating women at the bottom. And this is at odds with companies' focus because most of them just focus at the top on things like women on boards. So.
Well, and what's so interesting about that is we talk so much about like the pipeline and things like that. But so what do companies, based on the folks you talk to, what do they need to be doing at that sort of lower level then?
So it's really promoting women out of these lower levels, having some kind of action plan. And it's promotions throughout the pipeline that we see has more of an impact.
Right. Well, and one of the things you point out in your research is that the lack of those promotion, basically, it sort of plays through. It ultimately deprives...
It deprives you. Yeah. It deprives a company of where diversity has the most value, and that is in leadership positions. Right. And just bringing this more broadly to diversity, we find that screening out companies that lag on diversity metrics like women on boards, in the US, they add some kind of risk-return profiles to your portfolio. So extending that can add the same benefits.
All right. So when we look at something like what Goldman Sachs is doing, with it, we're not going to take a company public unless it has at least one woman or a diverse member on its board, and that bumps up to 2 years in 2001. Are those the sorts of things that ultimately move the needle, or did they just make it more part of the conversation?
It depends. It's definitely a start. I mean, we see companies, investors, governments, they're all dipping their toes into the issue around the pay gap. In fact, the UK, as an example, mandated pay gap disclosure. So it's dipping toes into the water, but as everyone just puts their foot in, we think companies that lag on it will just continue to be more exposed.
And so, you look across the entire ESG landscape, you and your colleagues, and you specifically, where does gender and these discrepancies, where does it fit into the overall conversation? When people are trying to tackle all sorts of issues, what prominence, I guess, does gender play?
It's a lens.
Yeah.
I think what we see and we continue to see is climate change gaining prominence and continuing forward. But gender pay gap, gender diversity as a whole continues to play a role in this lens that one applies to ESG.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, even maybe taking this in a slightly different direction, like even watching the Oscars last night. It is the sort of thing where it feels like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, people were just like, yeah, whatever, like we're moving on. But now, I mean, people are at least saying it. I guess the point that we see here, though, is that from a data perspective, you really do have to sort of go down a level to fully understand the complexity of it. And so what happens from here? I mean, is this, having done this index now for a few years, do we see companies reacting to this sort of thing, and how do they act?
So we'd have to see data for a few more years. I think this is the second year of the index. But we do think as investors, as companies start to get more proactive on this will reduce, and at least female diversity and leadership will continue to gain prominence as it already has been. California, as an example, just mandated female representation on its boards. So that will continue to increase.
And one of the things you point out in your research, too, is that it varies a bit industry to industry in terms of how women are represented both in the overall workforce, but also in that top pay quartile, right?
Yes.
What did you learn from that?
So there is a wide disparity. Some sectors, surprisingly, industrials does well in terms of the pay gap. Others, the usual culprits, financials, technology, these are ones that have a huge median pay gaps.
Right. It's interesting. I'm just looking across the financials line, and keep me honest here. It looks like 52%, it's pretty much a balanced workforce in financials, but the top pay quartile, the gap is 31%. Is that right?
So it's 31.
I'm not reading this right, am I?
So it's 31% more. There are 31% less women in the top roles than in the workforce at large. So it actually shows a very slow kind of progress through the ranks.
Got it. But the bottom pay quartile is 70%.
Is much more. So 70% over the normal workforce is in the bottom quartile. So most of your women are in the bottom quartile.
That's right, which is the issue that you're getting to the heart of. All right, thank you for keeping me honest. That was really, really interesting. Shaheen, contractor, ESG analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, taking a level down, looking at the Gender Equality Index research based on Bloomberg data. More straight ahead on Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks began the week with a solid gain as investors shook off fears about the coronavirus epidemic. The Dow Jones Industrial Average climbed 174, the S&P 500 rose 24, the Nasdaq Composite gained 108. Two of the nation's largest mall operators are combining as they try to battle the deepening slump in brick-and-mortar retail. Simon is buying Taubman Centers for $3.6 billion. The companies had been talking on and off since late last year. Google's plan to buy Fitbit is running into regulatory resistance in the U.S. and elsewhere. Antitrust officials are increasingly concerned about how online giants like Google can use data to increase their dominance. As Netflix expands in Hollywood to meet its growing appetite for content, would-be rivals are setting up shop nearby. Amazon, Apple, and HBO are moving into huge spaces in Culver City as they scale up their movie and TV operations. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
The 2020 NBA All-Star Game is live on TuneIn Premium. Catch every fast break, fadeaway, and alley-oop as Team LeBron and Team Giannis go head-to-head in Chicago.
Deep three, and in! Oh, man! 5 to shoot, LeBron, long three, good!
Which star will shine the brightest? Who will be named this year's MVP? Find out Sunday at 8 Eastern with ESPN Radio's live coverage of the NBA All-Star Game on TuneIn. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Start hearing more of what you want. Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
The comedian Louis C.K. is on tour now for the first time since his sexual misconduct against other comedians was brought to light. This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with critic Hilton Alls about how Louis C.K. is addressing the issue in his act or not addressing it. And more broadly, we'll talk about when and how a disgraced performer should come back before the public. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You ace vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesman to the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
Are you seeing a lot more buying power on the part of younger people in China?
Financial news made in Asia for use everywhere.
It is a bit of a waiting game.
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York.
Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 1061 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
And coming up here on Bloomberg, we're going to take you back to a discussion about the coronavirus, look into the impact it's having on the travel sector. We're going to check in with Haley Berg over at Hopper. First, let's hop on over to Charlie Pellet. He's got an update on what's going on after the trade.
Hi, thank you very much. And we've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing today. In fact, records for both the S&P 500 index, also the NASDAQ Composite Index. Equities beginning the week strong as investors look past the potential economic fallout from the spreading coronavirus to prepare for more corporate earnings. Paul Richards is president of Medley Global Advisors.
I think that we're in that situation now where the market's going to basically say, well, look, we'll give you a break on Q1. If this thing is resolved largely by the end of Q1, then the market gets going again. So to me, everyone's been given a break. I even think Trump is giving Xi a break in terms of the Phase 1 deal.
S&P 500 index climbing to a record up 24 points, up 0.7%. The Dow rallied 174 points, up 0.6. NASDAQ also at a record up 107 points, higher by 1.1%. 10-year up 6/32 with a yield of 1.56%. Gold up 0.2%, 15.73 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude retreating today, down 1.4%, 49.61 a barrel. Most sectors did advance today. Energy company shares, though, proving to be the exception, declining as West Texas Intermediate crude moving lower today below $50 a barrel. After the bell, we heard from DaVita. It reported earnings per share from continuing operations for the fourth quarter that beat the highest analyst estimate. Shares up now by just about 1.6%. Recapping, S&P at a record today, up by 0.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks a lot. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week live on Bloomberg Radio, streaming live on YouTube. This is Bloomberg. All right, well, the travel sector is one area where we know there is concern and action being taken when it comes to the coronavirus. Let's get a sense of that from Haley Berg, economist for Hopper, joining us on the phone from Boston, Massachusetts. Hi, Haley.
Hi.
All right, so we've been reading the headlines. We've been reading a lot of speculation. Help us understand what's actually going on out there when it comes to travel and worries about this virus.
Definitely. I think the biggest thing that we've seen so far is there's been a massive drop-off in demand for travel from the U.S. to China. So at its lowest point, we saw a 58% drop in search demand. So people in the United States actually looking for flights to China. That's an incredible drop. It's not something that we see regularly, and it's really unprecedented in this situation.
And so what should people be doing at this point? I mean, what are you hearing from experts in terms of, is it just sort of stand down and see how it plays out here?
From a travel perspective, the airlines are already taking action. So many of them have reduced their supply. We expected about 5% of international travel from the U.S. to be headed over to China, and that number will come down significantly over the next 2 months. For travelers, consumers who are looking to travel, we always advise check with governments on travel advisories, check with airlines if you already have a ticket book, see what policies they're using. Many airlines have come out and said that they'll refund or reroute customers who, either want to cancel their flight or maybe go somewhere different if they had a connection in China or even if China was their end destination.
And so are you seeing any effect at this point beyond sort of U.S.-China travel? Is it intra-regional? How do you sort of game that out?
Yes, we are seeing an impact outside of just China. So we estimate that about 80% of the decline in demand for international travel in the past few weeks is driven by China. But there's also been a drop-off in demand for other Asian and Southeast Asian destinations. So think Thailand, Japan, Taiwan. Those countries are also seeing a bit of a drop-off. Mm-hmm. In part, that could be driven by the fact that so many airlines route through China to get to those countries. So routes are pretty limited right now. But we've seen an impact beyond just U.S. to China routes, definitely.
Right. All right. So at this point in the conversation, remind us what Hopper is. You're an economist, but what's the broader business here?
So we're a mobile travel app. We predict hotel and airfare prices and send notifications to our users when it's the best time to book. So we have an archive of trillions of data points on historical prices and demand, which help us get, really forecast where we think prices will go, as well as have kind of a unique perspective on demand in past and demand today.
Right. Well, and so many people are booking via mobile at this point, right?
Yes, we've seen a drastic shift in the travel industry from desktop onto mobile. Mobile is definitely the fastest growing segment for online travel agencies and booking platforms.
And so just back to the virus for a second. I mean, as an economist, you study data, you study patterns, and as you say, you have a lot of data at your disposal. One of the things that I feel like epidemiologists worry about and economists and others worry about as we're trying to get a sense of this, investors too, is we're in sort of uncharted waters at this point. More people have died now than died of SARS. We're dealing with an economy that's much more sort of globally connected than it was the last time we saw something of this magnitude. How do you sort of keep the best eye on it going forward?
I think consumer demand is one of the best signals of what will happen over the next few months. So by looking at search demand and where people are actually booking tickets to go, we'll get a good sense of whether this is a temporary situation where we've temporarily reduced capacity, temporarily seen a drop in demand, or if this is something that will be more persistent throughout the end of the year. Consumer demand, I think, is one of the best signals for what we can expect, where we expect people to put their money throughout the end of the year. So for the whole economy, oil prices are very dependent on where this demand goes. Where capacity is planned will depend on where this demand goes. So that's really what we're watching.
Right. And so does this remind you, even setting aside virus comparisons, does this